Hey guys, it's Christina. This is Vox and Guest, and I am joined by an icon of fabulousness and badassery, none other than Bryce Evans. Bryce, how are
Wow.
you, my dear?
I'm very good. Thank you. I appreciate that compliment.
Oh no, it
That
is
was a good
well
one.
earned for the
Thank you.
glasses alone, the whole thing. I dig the aesthetic.
Thank
I'm
you.
a big fan. So it is so nice to have you here. I have been looking forward to this interview for a while now. And I you may or may not know, but I begin every episode with a hard-hitting, serious, intensely journalistic question.
Okay.
Okay. It intimidates a lot of people, but I feel like you can handle it. Okay. So
Okay.
if you start to feel uncomfortable or anything like that, let me know and we can just move on. Okay.
Sure.
Already ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Sandals with socks. Is it like sex on a stick or do you kill it with fire?
I'll kill it with fucking fire.
Okay. All right.
Why? Why should that ever be allowed?
It's
Oh,
so
that drives me
bad.
crazy. Yeah, and in
It's like
Colorado,
the
it's such a
cheapest
thing
form
too.
of birth control. It really is. Like, seriously.
That's
So
awesome.
bad. Oh my god.
It's so
Okay,
bad.
so you are a
Wow.
hardcore kill it with fire. Do you see a lot of that
Oh
in
yeah.
Colorado?
Oh, all
Oh
over the place.
no.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
tour so much, you've probably seen socks and sandals in many a state.
I saw it in Los Angeles too, so it's just a thing, but like I don't know. I don't love that look by any means.
No,
If you do, that's cool, right? Like whatever works for you, but
that's right.
not for
Do
me.
note that if Bryce runs across you, you may end up
Kill it with
being
fire.
being immolated in some way. Maybe just with a fiery gaze. I think that's most. You'll get a glare. You'll get some shade thrown at you. But all right, I'm glad the question was okay.
Yeah.
I was a little worried that it might hit you a little too hard, but you seem to have rolled with it. So okay, so let's have some fun. So you have a long historied career in music. For a young individual, you have been in music for over 20 years at this point. Am I right?
A long time.
Yeah.
Long time.
So talk to me about, because I know Clapton was your gateway drug. But
Oh
talk to me a
God,
little bit
yeah.
about little 6-year-old Bryce, sitting there watching, listening to Clapton. Talk to me about how the musician origin story of Bryce Evans.
Sure. So I get this question all the time in podcasts. This is like a really asked question. So when I started by listening to Clapton because my dad loved Clapton, right? He is a Clapton fan, hardcore, and he had all of the box sets of the CDs,
Wow.
and it was one of those like I kind of grew up around music anyways, and then come 6 years old, that is when I was riding with my dad to a monster truck rally at the Pepsi Center in Denver,
Okay.
and we were in his truck, and I'm like doubled over as he's listening to this. What's the name of that album? One More Car, One More Rider.
Okay.
And so it's like disc 2, track 7. It's a live version of Layla, and it's just it hits you right in your heart. The beginning with all its cool synthy stuff, and then he comes in with like this super awesome tone. It just really got me at that point. So I'm like doubled over the seat. My ear is next to the speaker, and he loved listening to music loud. He still does. And I'm doubled over and it's blaring in my ear. I have this super loud Fender Stratocaster just blasting away, and I couldn't get enough of it. And much like the whole Billy Gibbons story of when he first heard the guitar, he's like, I had to do that. That was kind of what happened to me.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, here you go. You have no choice now. Inject with heroin that is music, and
Yeah, that's it. You're done.
yeah, that was the end of it. So, and then just ended up picking up a guitar that my dad had in the basement.
Okay.
And he brought it, or I found it because we had a whole bunch of stuff down there from them moving throughout the years. And I was digging through there one day and I found it and I brought it upstairs. And when he got home from work, I'm like, well, what is this? You've been holding out on me, because he knew I was interested. And they had gotten me this little, one of those little acoustic guitars that like every kid has.
Yeah,
but I would
yeah.
not put that thing down. And so then they were like, well, maybe we should get him
A real one, yeah.
a real one. Yeah. And so, well, that thing was so old. It was like a 1960 something Takai or something like that, like a Japanese guitar.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, to me, it wasn't a real guitar. It wasn't like I wanted a Strat. I wanted like something cool, like
you wanted
Gibson
a big
or whatever,
name. Yeah,
exactly. And I didn't get that. So, but that was okay because it started my entire journey on now what I really can't live without. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the origin story of the whole thing.
Okay. And so, I mean, you then, from what I can gather, were pretty much a solo act for a long time.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, to some extent, right? So when I was, so I was about 8 years old when they got me like my first guitar. I have this blue Stratocaster that's back here behind this crate that is the first one they got me, right? And that one kind of like started everything off. And so then I played that for about 3 years, just kind of learning from books, like the little Clapton instructionals or, guitar chords for beginners or whatever.
Right.
And just kind of started teaching myself how to do it. And then got decent with it. And then my parents were, my mom one night was reading through the paper and she was like, oh, hey, Bryce. She calls me out of my room and I'm, of course, in there playing guitar, right? She's like, do you think you would like this? And it's a rock and roll camp from a local studio here.
Oh, yeah.
In Colorado. And I was like, well, what is it? Like, I read it, but I'm like, well, that's for kids, because I was like 11. So big boy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And,
wizened old man at that point.
Yeah, and she's like, well, let's look it up. And so we went and jumped on the computer and we found the studio's website. And it's like a studio,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, no, I think that's for me. Yeah,
like,
yeah, Mom,
I'll deign to go to the studio and whatever.
And it was so expensive, and I'm so thankful that my parents put me through that. Amazing. And I did it that year when I was 11, and then I did it a couple years after that, like 3-4 years in a row, and then finally ended up playing the Fox Theater when I was like 14 years old because of that.
Wow.
Which changed my life. That was kind of the minute of like, oh yeah, no, you have to do this for the rest of your life. Because I felt like the coolest person on the planet, Yeah,
and the crowd and all that adrenaline
yeah.
and yeah.
It's heroin. It really is heroin. It's so addicting. And yeah, and so does that answer your question?
Well,
I'm sorry.
You definitely were a solo act when you were like 14. So I'm guessing then that you maybe through that. That's okay. I'm actually just proud of myself that for once I was the one that remembered the question, because usually I'm like, what did I ask you? But yeah. So okay. So you definitely you'd hit the big time at 14 and. And then, so did you, because I'm assuming like most musicians, you probably did, some time in cover bands and all of that.
So that's where I was going with all that. So I played the Fox Theater, right? And that was with a band. And in that rock and roll camp, they put us in a lot of just bands because I'd never been in one before.
Sure.
At that age, like you kind of either end up playing with friends or something like that happens. And so when I was in there, I got into, it was like one band a week, and every week you would have a show at the end, right? And so then each summer camp, it would change. Mm-hmm. You'd have a new band each week. And that was very interesting to like learn all these different songs and whatever, but it was really fun. And so that kind of led me down the road till I was about, 20. I moved to North Carolina. I didn't play much at all. Like I would pick it up, I would still play, but it wasn't like, this is what I need to do. I just kind of lost sight of it. Huh. And so
well, hold on. Let me pause you there, because that's an interesting, and it may be for reasons you don't want to get into, but how do you go from being on stage, at 14 and going, and then you lose sight of it? Like something had to.
I think that's an interesting question, and one that nobody has asked me yet. So good job on that.
I asked you the first question and you were like, oh, so many people have asked it. I'm like, just wait. I'm sure I'll ask you at least one thing. I didn't think it would be yet. But that's
a great question.
What could have possibly, like, if you were at that point with it for 8 years already? Well, yeah.
I think it might have been burnout. Because I was in a band basically from the time I was 11 years old until the time I was 20, right? Or 19, somewhere in there.
I
And
love
so
that
it
you
was
were like
like,
road weary by the time you were 20. You know, you'd been in it for a decade almost. Like you were just burned out at 20. It's
It was
amazing.
just
But
like,
yeah, that's real.
Man, it was really hard because it was just like, I was the band that I didn't want to be with. And I was
That'll
just
burn
kind
you
of
out
trudging
faster.
through.
Yeah.
I was trudging through with that. We were playing songs that I'd played so many times.
Yep.
And it was just like, I'm losing joy for this. And I lost so much joy for it that, I stopped. I moved to North Carolina with my now fiance. And
congratulations.
we were there. Thank you. And we were there for like, I don't know, 3-4 years. And then there was one point I found Joe Bonamassa again. And so I was like, that guy can play the guitar, right? And so I started like, well, I'm going to start playing again. And so I started picking it up. I learned Blues Deluxe, like at least the intro of it. And that kind of just set me on the path again. I was like, I miss this a lot. And so we started talking, moved back from North Carolina. And we were like, well, we're back here. The scene's better here. Let's like try to play. And so I started doing that. And that was kind of right around 2018, 2019. Right. And so that was kind of when I made that decision. I actually just had a thing on Instagram the other day. And it's like, you've been on Instagram for like 5 years or something. It's like right around now is when I decided.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this. And so then the pandemic hit and I was able to take my stimulus check, get all this recording stuff. And I was like, I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. We're just going to give it everything I possibly can. And let's see what happens. And so that's when I released Caged. And that was my first like acoustic single. Right. And so at that point I was like, like I could do that. Like a lot of my songs at the time that I was writing was kind of singer-songwriter, but I didn't have a band to bounce it off of. So it's kind of like, well, if I want to do this kind of a thing, like I need to kind of write that way.
Well, and you had already met Colin at this point, because I think you guys met in 2019.
2019,
so were you playing together at all before you officially decided, to bring him on to do drums for you? Or
Good point. I definitely lost sight of that. I was focused more on
I got you, Colin. Don't worry, I got you.
The solo part, right? He's probably like, yes. Make sure he didn't text me. Actually, okay, he hasn't texted me. So
especially since this isn't live, that would be kind of scary if you knew.
Right. I mean, I asked him.
You'd have to look around your house for bugs at that point. So Colin is stalking you on video somewhere.
Right. So, like.
You'd met him.
I met Colin in about 2018, right? And so that's when me and his dad started with Colin, obviously, started a band called Yuppie Wagon. And Hurricanes is actually, I love
that name.
Hurricanes is actually a Yuppie Wagon song. So is Devil's Hall. Those are both Yuppie Wagon songs.
Okay. And don't worry, guys. We'll get to all of these song titles. Don't worry. We'll go through all of that.
So, that's when I found him. But I was in that band for like a year and a half, I think, 2 years maybe. And then pandemic hit because it was hard to get gigs. I was frustrated again at that point. And I decided, I'm going to go on my own. And that's when I got 2020 and then my studio gear and started doing things on my own. So, that's when all the tracks were all on my own. So Caged was obviously an acoustic single.
Right.
But then as we get going into my discography, it's more band related stuff. And a lot of those songs I did by myself. The only ones that have Colin or a bass player on them is Hurricanes and Devil's Hall. And the rest is all from here with just me. Just me.
So I mean, so that's interesting. I mean, it obviously once the pandemic started, it changed the trajectory of a lot of musicians' situations, either because they suddenly had time that they didn't to get solo recording done that they had planned on doing, or they turned to solo and whatever because they couldn't gig out or their bands were, what I mean? Like, and so it's interesting that you got so much done at that point, and then we're able to come in 2022 when you guys, I guess, started playing out officially. And we'll get to that too, but I'm going to do, because everyone's in the comments going, is the song coming soon? Song. So why don't we let everybody have a treat early on here and play them a little something, which when I asked Bryce which song they wanted to choose for the show, They were like, oh, you said, you were like, it could be this or this or this or this. And I was like,
Yeah,
well,
couldn't
if
make
you
up my mind.
really want to know what I would choose. And so Bryce was very sweet and chose the song that I suggested. And this one is called Hurricanes, which you already mentioned. So this came out last April, I guess. And I love this song. I love this song so much. So we'll very briefly, just before we play it, and then we'll come back and talk about it more. Is there anything else that you wanted to say just to lead into it before we roll it? And then we can come back and get more in depth afterwards.
Well, just, this is a song that's about mental health, and taking care of yourself. And, I always want people to know that before they listen to it, because it kind of strikes a little differently then.
Yeah.
So just that it's a song about mental health, and to be mindful of that as you listen to it.
Well, that's, you're right in the Vox and Guest crew band together wheelhouse there. We are huge advocates for paying attention to mental health, taking care of your mental health, all of that. So I'm glad that you said that now before people are listening, so that they can hear it with that ear. So no further ado, let's roll Hurricanes by Bryce Evans.
I feel so lonely, living in my head. I feel so homeless, even in my bed. But you're right here, next to me, rubbing my hand, consoling grief. But the pain I feel inside is so tough, locking up my dreams in 9 cuffs. I just wanna be myself, but the world won't let me be. So I'm screaming, hey, help me out. It seems to be a whisper, it might be a shout. Hey, help me out. I can't swim this world without you, before the hurricanes pull me down. Pull me down. There used to be a time when I could stand myself, but that was long ago. You could call me a different person, yeah. But the pain I feel inside is so real, locking up my bones in cold steel, shackling me to the ship when I just want to be on the shore. Hey, help me out. It seems to be a whisper, might be a shout. Hey, help me out. I can't swim to shore without you, for the hurricanes pull me down. Pull me down. Pull me down. Pull me
So yeah, I really, I mean, I like all of your stuff. Don't get me wrong, but this one is the one that I listen to most because I mean, I mention this because I'm never sure who watches the show, who doesn't, who knows this, who doesn't. But like when I research for this show, I watch and listen to literally everything that's available online. So I read through everything. I go through websites. I go through, you know, Spotify, YouTube, everything, and like. And so I'm pretty versed in your catalog that's at least available to people online, which is obviously not everything you've ever done because you've been in music a really long time, but it's the most recent sets of things.
Right.
And this one really, it's first of all, it's a different feel for you than what you had been doing, which, you know, we should mention, I suppose I usually do, but then we went off pretty quickly. You know, would you call, you know, sort of earlier iterations of your music more like a alt blues rock kind of feel? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And this one clearly more of an alt rock song. And so that's not the only reason that I liked it the most, although it's definitely a genre that I tend to love. But I mean, I was getting, and again, I always say this, people will probably, you know, recite it along with me as they're watching here. But when I use references to other musicians and other songs or whatever, it's always a favorable comparison. And it's never like, oh, you bit this from this band or this, whatever. It's just the things that it kind of, you know, evoked in me that I knew as I was listening. And I'm hearing some Tonic. I'm hearing some Marcy Playground, Sex and Candy. I'm hearing all this like really cool, very moody, you know, and I kept in the middle of it because it's about halfway through your catalog, but closer to the recent, obviously. I stopped and I went back and I listened to it again. And then when I went to your YouTube and I saw that the video is an acoustic version, but the album is, you know, the single is not, right? And I thought that was a very interesting choice because it, first of all, kudos on a song that can be just as good acoustically and electrically, you know, because they don't all, sometimes you're like, oh, I don't really love the original, but then the acoustic is great. Or sometimes the original is great and the acoustic is kind of like, but they're both great. They're different, but they're both great. So what was the decision to make an acoustic video rather than to do, you know, the single that you released on Spotify, that version there, the one that everybody just heard?
So it's certainly it was one of those things of like, I was getting ready to drop that. And at that point in time, I think that came out in April of 2022. Is that right?
Yeah.
So at that point in time, I had not yet started the Black Cats. That wasn't really a thing. It was kind of a thought, but it hadn't happened yet. And so I really didn't have anybody to like lean on for other parts, you know, and could I have like just taken the track and like pasted it underneath and gone and done a whole bunch of videos and then edited it all together and sent it out. Yeah, of course. But I wanted to give it something different because the acoustic version of it I had been playing just like messing around with. And I was like, man, you know, I kind of like the sound of that. I like what it does for the song. And it probably should be shared. And it was just something else that is like a new piece of content to offer to people. And
it's cool.
You know, I share that video all the time. I like that one.
Well, and it's clever too, because I mean, you didn't have to do a band or a play video where, you know, because I mean, like Devil's Hall is more of a theatrical kind of video. You could have done something like that and just played the you know, the single track underneath it. But I love that you didn't. And the video is very intimate. You know, it's just you sitting on a little stone wall with your guitar, singing, playing, you know, and it really, what I like about it is that I like a lot of things about it, but one of the things that I like most about it is that it holds the listener closer and it really makes you pay attention to what you're saying, what you're playing. It's very stripped down, obviously. And given the subject matter, I think that's fitting. You know, I think to have something that intimate and really boiled down to its essence, it does punch in a different way. So I mean, I think it was a good choice. But I mean, it was great because I I was just surprised initially by the choice, because it was also brave considering how strong the single is, to
Oh
take it in a
yeah,
different
sure,
direction,
sure.
and it was theoretically a risk, although I think you probably knew you weren't risking all that much because they were both
I
going to be
didn't
good. But
even think about that.
oh,
Honestly,
all right, look at you just leaping with both
I was
feet.
just
I like
like,
that.
I just want to like, I don't know. To me, this is art, right? And to me, this is
Yeah,
it's something that everybody connects with, right? Music connects
yeah,
with everybody, and there's always an audience for a artist,
that's
and
it.
so it's like if I just let it out with all of the intention of this is what I have to offer you,
Hmm.
I don't really take it as much of a risk. At least I didn't then. Nowadays, I think a little more calculated
Well,
with
yeah,
decisions like that. But back then it was so much like let's
yeah.
just let it out.
See where it
Yeah,
goes, kind of thing. Yeah.
exactly.
Well, and I mean, and you make some interesting choices, and I mean interesting in a good way, not euphemistically bad or anything, but like in the way that you recorded the single, right? So, there are those kind of, clearly alternated vocal tracks back and
Yes.
forth,
Yes.
and what I like about that especially is that it within the context of the lyrics particularly, it really does seem like it's your voices in our ears just kind
Yeah.
of giving this message and kind of panning it back and forth and saying, okay, here's what I need you to know, here's how I need you to understand how I feel. And I mean,
Right.
do you want to talk about the lyrics a little bit more, since you mentioned
Sure.
about mental
Yeah.
health and kind of how, because I'm very interested in your songwriting process in general. So if you want to start with
Oh,
that, with
absolutely.
this
Sure.
here, yeah, just sort of how you get from, idea to finished thing and all of that.
Yeah. So many different ways that I approach that, but that song in particular was really like I had a big spell of depression there for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those, like, a lot of songs for me come at kind of like dark times, and the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
darkness helps me write better.
Mm-hmm.
At least more from the heart. I don't know about like theoretically better, but
I know what you
more,
mean. You're
yeah,
more,
more
prolific
feeling, right?
maybe, or yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, did I like was in this whole fit of depression, and had my current fiance come in, and she was rubbing my hand. And so
Yeah.
there's a part in there
Yeah.
that says that rubbing
Yeah.
my hand consoling grief.
Yep.
And so that was kind of that's like real life stuff, right?
Mhm.
Because that was kind of what was going on at the time. And so
Mhm.
then that was kind of when I really started to learn about theory in your songwritings, and how you can like use them to your advantage. And so I tried to kind of make like this ABC A type of thing,
Okay.
or B, whatever. And it was kind of a cool like way that it flowed. The riff just kind of popped into my head one day, and I was like,
Mhm.
well, that sounds cool. And
Yeah,
then
very catchy. Very
yeah,
catchy. Yeah.
that song, thank you. That song came in at like a weird frequency, like it just kind of came out of the ether with the way the lyrics came together with the music, and then
Okay.
how we ended up getting it recorded. It was such a cool song, and it sounds so good. That is honestly one of my favorite songs that I've done.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Because of the production of that. Our mixing guy was amazing.
Really excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, he was so good. And sadly he like got a girlfriend and a couple dogs, and then he kind of stopped doing it. And I'm like, no,
Oh,
why?
no.
And
Tell
then I
him,
was
a
forced
few
to,
thousand people who would hire him if he
yeah,
got back into it.
exactly
Maybe
right.
that'll change his mind.
God. And he had such great gear, and anyways, so yeah, it was a song that, really came out of nowhere. And so with all the depression stuff that's in it,
Mm-hmm.
it was also kind of about let me think. I'm trying to think about how the like pre-chorus goes. But there's a part where it's like I just want to be on the shore, and
Yeah.
shackling my hands and stuff like that. And it was so
Yeah.
much about how depression is shackling you to this belief system and this idea that
Mm-hmm.
it's all so bad. And I know that it's a lot more than that, right? But in the best like terms that I could get to explain to people,
especially being in the middle of it.
Feels. Yeah. And like what those, metaphors mean of like shackles and being,
right, being on the ship
when you
versus
just want to
the
be on the shore.
right,
yeah.
exactly.
I was trying to make all this reflective stuff of like, this could be where you're at, and could be where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can't really get there if you're depressed and if you're sad about things. And so you have to try your best to like pull yourself out of your own mental hurricanes. And then, screaming for help, like during the chorus, hey, help me out. So much about, like, hey, help me out. Like, I'm just, what seems to be a whisper might feel like my own personal shout to you, even though it was like,
that's one of my favorite lines in the
know?
whole thing. It's great because it really, it points up how intense things can be internally and how invisible that can be to everybody outside of your own head and your own, mental health and your own depression or anxiety or whatever it is. And I think that it's, it's not a metaphor that I've heard before, the idea of shackles maybe, but not necessarily the idea of ship and shore and just kind of where you want to be going and where you want to get to and how you're stuck and why you're stuck. And I think it's just, between the lyrics being so honest and raw in that way. And it makes sense to me that they hit the way they do because you were writing truth.
Absolutely.
A lot of people will use mental health as a gimmick for their music now, and they'll retrofit a song that, they have, written or something or whatever, or they'll say, oh, this is about mental health, or this is about this is about that. And, it could be, or it could just be about, a trip to the park or whatever. I don't know. But like when people are really writing from that space, whether it's acutely happening or it's something that they've lived through where they have that empathy and it's genuine, I think it connects with the listeners much more deeply because it's real. And, you can recognize yourself and your own struggles in that. So, and that's part of why I loved the choice to do it acoustically in the video, because as I said, there's no way to avoid listening to what you're saying in that context.
Sure. It's very much so more focused on just the guitar, which is the music, and then the melody of the lyrics, right? And so you only have these two things to focus on, and it does do that. And like that's kind of always the goal when I write music, is that why write anything that isn't from your point of view?
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I have done it. I have probably written songs that, I was like, oh yeah, I went to the store today and I saw this and this made me think of that. And then I kind of just like conjured the story in my head.
Yeah.
And sometimes those are great songs.
Yeah. And there's nothing at all wrong with that. I mean,
absolutely not.
It's still art.
Not. Absolutely. But personally, I want to give you things of how I feel and how I see the world. Right. And so that's what music gives me the opportunity to do. And so when the acoustic version was released, it definitely wasn't on my mind like that, but it was like, I feel that this is a good release for this song, and it's a re-release. It gives the audience more reason to listen to the song. Because there's two different versions. It's keeping your eyes on my brand. And that was kind of the idea. And so, I really love that song.
I do appreciate though, that while you are clearly, and I mean, this is something that, comes up with, because there are different levels of ambition in the indie music community, right? So, and I'm sidestepping for a little, but it does come back to songwriting and process and all of that, which I want to get more into broadly beyond just, how you got to Hurricanes. But, there are people who just make music for themselves and they never release it. There are people who make music mainly for themselves and they'll release it. And if people happen to like it or listen to it, bonus, right? But that's not really the goal. There are people who would like people to listen to them and hear their music and stream and follow them and all of that. But it's more for, what they want to share with the world and, validation of their art and their talent and all of that. And then there are the people who want this to be this trajectory of, going out, being a touring band and selling albums and eventually selling out larger venues and stadiums and arenas and the whole thing.
Yes.
And, this is a conversation I had when I interviewed Sepsis too, that, the tricky thing I think about being an artist who also wants to be hugely successful is that you cannot do that without also being strategic and business minded.
Absolutely.
And planning
Yep.
and marketing yourself. And, I talked to Michael Bate about that a bit too, that there is this monster of, social media and self-promotion and everything that, the people who really want to make it. Yeah. But I mean, and the thing is that, there are people in the indie community who are not working at that level of ambition, which is also, by the way, completely fine. I mean, I'm one of them,
Sure.
yeah, I'm in a band, but it's a cover band at this point, and it's mainly just to make music. And obviously Vox and Stix has become much more about everybody else's music than our own. There are people that I talk to all the time that don't even realize that I have a band or that I'm a singer because they just know me from the show or,
Sure.
from promoting other people or whatever. But my point is that, there can be backlash when you are ambitious and you do all of the
Absolutely.
things that ambitious people need
Absolutely.
to do. And
if there isn't, right, if there isn't any backlash, then you're not doing it right.
Well, that's pretty much what William from Sepsis said. He's like, it's kind of like that. That's the, that's kind of the cost, so to speak, of doing business. And it is unfortunate that any artist who wants to get their art out, whether it's music or literature or, fine art or whatever, you do have to market yourself. You do have to be a business person. You do have to send the emails and put in the calls and show up at the venues and network with people and, be relentlessly self-promotional online and all this other stuff. So, I mean, it's, I never judge that. Not that anyone would care if I did, but I mean, I know I talk to bands and musicians where they'll hear about a bigger band and they'll be like, this band, this musician, whatever, they just want to, they're not real. They don't really care. They're not, they don't care about the indie community. They're just whatever. And,
sure.
Not that anyone has said that about you. I'm not saying that, but like, just so everyone watching understands, and I hope you don't mind my sharing this, but you were so sweet when we first started talking before we began rolling, the actual episode that we're watching now, that you were talking about how great the Band Together community is and how, amazing it is to see all these people who are, supporting each other, really listening to each other and all of this. And so to me, you're in the sweet spot, right? You have very definitely one foot in the indie community still, because you're just starting to get to the point of blowing up. Right. But you're not trying to leave it because it's less than to you. You just want to be a really big indie act that happens to be signed at some point, if that makes any sense.
I don't even know if I want that, right?
Okay, that's interesting.
Signing for me is not really an interest right now. And there's really only one label that I would want to go on. And the way I'm leaning now with my music, they probably wouldn't want me anyways, right? Because they're like a blues label. And
Okay. You're moving in more of an alt rock direction, right?
Alt rock direction, right? And I want to be in control of my company. If to me it's so much about business with like the way I think about marketing. We're starting to do this whole thing. I can't say too much about this, but we're starting to do this whole like show plan, right? On what we're gonna create into our show and how we're going to morph our music into this and use all sorts of new equipment, and kind of get things
so
like
you've got like a whole experience that you're planning and
all the way from the email list, right? So from the minute, like kind of not a revamp of the brand, but it's certainly going to go along with this next album. And is going to be part of the brand kind of from that point on. So, all the way from the time you see the social media, and it's all kind of framed a certain way into the mailing list and then into, being a great fan that loves to support a band that is trying their damnedest, and that's kind of the whole idea is like that's how we want to funnel it. But that's kind of where the business side is, right? And then there's the creative side. And the creative side, that is so like, it's such a hard thing to talk about, because it's like, how do I put into words what I want to express to people? You know, that's why I do it with music.
Yeah.
But like,
I think you just say it. You say it unfiltered. I think that, because
I try.
and honesty
Really try.
that's it. Because even if it's something that people don't necessarily like when they hear it, I think it's difficult not to respect honesty, whatever form it takes.
Being a queer person right now at this point in time is a huge, like, that's not socially accepted still. I mean, it's getting better, but now we have all these laws across all the whole country that are starting to, ban people like me, right?
Direction.
Right. And so it's like, that is such a crazy thing to be that kind of a person. And then in this industry where, if you say the wrong thing to the wrong person, it could be bad for you. But to me, it's just like, this world is abundant with how many people are on it, with how many places there are.
Right.
And if I piss off one person,
there's always somebody else.
I truly don't believe that that's the end of the road for you. You know how many people I've had say that to me? We actually, like, one of our, I don't know if you look through our photos, but one of our, so one of our,
I mean, I go through everything. So if you posted something on MySpace, like 15 years ago, I read it. You know what I mean? Like I'm that way with it.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. So the one photo at the Whiskey A Go-Go with all of us flipping the camera off, that's a new tradition we started. I had
guys, by the way, if you just so you understand it, it's definitely on their website, which is where I saw it.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
if you go to Bryce's Facebook, I'm sure they have it on there too. Like, it's
all over the place.
A great photo. And the caption was something like, I think you had been so busy, and then you're like, we didn't get a chance to post what we wanted to, but this is for everybody who said we weren't going to make it, for everybody, and it's just everybody's just throwing up the finger, and it's such a great shot. It's a great shot.
The story behind this is Colin was in a working band, a working cover band, and a working original band. They had some good albums out that had won some awards. This is one of those bands that I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but with music, there's strictly business bands, right? There are bands that don't care about you.
I've been in them. Yes.
Absolutely.
It's like, and you could pull out one person and put in another person, and it's like Menudo, which I'm dating myself, I know, with that reference, but like you just keep going, and it would move on without it. Yeah, I know.
Absolutely. And that for Colin, was going pretty good, but then there was a point where I booked a gig. They had no gigs at that point in time when I booked this gig. Colin was in for it. He was ready to go. I'm like, cool. And usually the rule had been, if he's working with them, I get to I go find a new drummer. It's not a big deal. Like, it was a working band at the beginning of the Black Cats, and we were just kind of working like paid
and you have to adapt around the schedule, and that's only fair.
Exactly. And so I had a couple lists of players for each instrument. They're like, okay, you can't work, like, let's see if you can work, and so it was very much so business band. So that was fine. Well, the other agreement was that if he was playing with me, they wouldn't book a gig, or they would get somebody else. That was kind of how it was going to go. Fair. So it was fine. It worked great for a while. And then one day I booked a show for my birthday this last April.
Yeah.
And they booked one like 2 months beforehand, asked him if he could play it. He said no. Kept asking him. He kept saying no, that he was playing with me. Eventually, one thing led to another, without getting all these crazy details of the thing.
I'm guessing Colin's not in that band anymore.
No, he's not in that band anymore. That band, I still have trouble with those guys every now and again.
I was gonna say, I am watching the salt level rise.
I'm so not happy about
like
that.
Bridge of the nose right now on you, my dear.
Yeah. So
everyone's looking at Bryce, okay, they may spill the tea. They may spill the tea. They want to spill the tea. But you're
really
not. You're not. You're
not gonna do it. So
I'll save you from yourself, because you no matter what, you never want to badmouth anybody.
Exactly.
But we've read between the lines. Not
this happened, right? Okay. This happened, and when that happened, all these really bad things were said, and so one of the things though that we ended up hearing through the local scene around here in the grapevine was that the person who was in this band that booked for this band said, oh, their music careers are over.
How dramatic.
And then a few days later, or a few, I guess, months later, I ended up playing the Whiskey A Go-Go.
Yeah, booking the whiskey.
And I got a picture because it's the new tradition, right? It's like now we get all of our crowds, hope at least if there is a crowd that night.
Right. You never know.
To, flip the bird to the camera with us.
It's great. No, it's great. And you're right.
Like,
and
don't tell me I can't do this.
Thing. And that's it. It's like, what do you mean your music career's over? So you're in a working cover band or whatever, and you're going to somehow ruin the trajectory of someone's career. Like, I don't have that kind of power over space and time. I doubt that they do. Like, what?
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is it's like
ridiculous.
You probably know bands and you probably know people, and those people all have connections, right?
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, you have to look at the integrity of the person, right? And so, like, all of the people that I've worked with, all the venues that I've worked with that know me, if they heard something bad against me,
they'd know it wasn't
like,
true.
That's not true.
Yeah,
at all,
that's it.
And so for me, it's just like spread as much crap as you want.
That's right. That's exactly right. Good for you. Yeah, because
I don't care. Love me or hate me.
Conduct yourself in a way where people know who you are, and they can choose not to like it, but you don't seem at all. I mean, for like the hour or whatever that I've known you so far, like, you don't seem like somebody who's overly concerned with what other people think of you. And I don't mean that in like a fuck you, I don't care about other people kind of way. I just mean like, and maybe it does come down to being a queer person that probably at some point in life didn't get to be who you are. But like, it's, I think, owning yourself, whoever you are, and being authentic and true to that. There's a lot of power and strength in that, and whether you're doing that as a person in your day-to-day life or as a musician, trying to book gigs or whatever, you're right. Because yes, I've been in those situations too, where people will talk shit, and temporarily it may disturb the waters a little bit, but down the line, it always comes out. It always comes out, because those people have a problem with everyone.
Well, see, and the thing about that is that particular dude in this scene is known for that. Venues have told him that they're not playing venues because of that, because they've heard rumors about this guy. And so it's just like, I'm like,
I've had those conversations where people, I'm like, oh, hey, we can't do it. There's this band that could fill in, and they're like, we don't work with that band because they always demand this, or they always, want the money up front, or they always want a higher pay because they think they're a better band than the other bands that we host at the venue or whatever. And if you want to make trouble for other people, you're going to end up making trouble for yourself. So good for you for not even listening. Yeah. Plus, I mean, look, the other element of this is, when you're talented, right? And so if you weren't good at what you do, then people would be like, all right, yeah, we don't need to book them because, they're a jerk, or this person said this thing or whatever. But like, even if you were a jerk, let's be real, the music industry is a business. People would still book you if you were good and you were going to sell drinks. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
absolutely the truth.
It's not a high moral ground for venues. That's not a real concern. So I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That happens with players, right? Like, that affects you with players. And that actually did end up affecting me with a player, not Colin, but another bass player that were really good friends with those guys, right? And so that's where it hits you, right? It hits you on this social level of like, you're in the scene, they hear something about you. Now that group of people in their clique will not associate with you, which is fine, because I don't just work here in Denver.
Right.
I work
you're all over the country. That's
so
right.
Like, if you like, I don't get to work with a couple people in Denver, and there's a whole bunch of people here that play, right?
Well, and I was going to say, you don't live in like West Kakalaki or whatever, where there are like 4 musicians. Like you're in a big area for music. So I mean, like I keep meaning to hook you up with Adam Kitchen from Punk Rock Panda Promotions.
Oh yeah, no, I already shout out to Adam. That dude is the bomb. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, he's helping me with
cool,
some tour dates coming up. He's already gotten me 2 different dates. So yeah, I love Adam. He's actually helped me run a show when I was in LA. He was here in Colorado helping me run ticketing and stuff while I was out.
Okay, so big shout to Punk Rock Panda Promotions. There we go. Yeah,
he is the bomb. If you you got to do right by him, right? You got to try your best and try to help him promote and do the community thing, right?
That's it. Yeah.
And back to like what we were saying earlier with lifting each other up, and in that scene, it's so very you know, like there's so many different ways of looking at it, right? And
Yeah.
you get to one of those levels that's like you're better than everybody, and you know, you get more because of like that feeling of how you think of yourself
Superiority.
as a band.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely comes back to that. Like when you're in community, right, with other people, and they know you, and they know your character, and they know your work ethic, and they know what you do and who you are in the scene. It does set this precedence of like, wow, okay, like this person at least has it together and they're trying. You know, like you might not be the biggest thing since sliced bread or Taylor Swift, right? But you at least have a reputation, you know?
Right.
And that reputation does help, especially when it comes down to things like that. And so we just were like, let's use this for content, right? Let's have this photo where every time we play to a decent crowd, we just have them flip you off. And so we marketed so much for the whiskey.
Yeah.
The turnout was really good for us and the other bands. And so it was like, let's just use this opportunity. And
it's kind of like your signature. Yeah. No, I love it. And I mean, and I mean, you know, we shouldn't roll right past that because, you know, for anyone who's watching who isn't from the States or, you know, just maybe doesn't know the scene. I mean, the Whiskey A Go-Go is like, it's, you know, one of the most storied, famous, I don't want to say prestigious because that sounds like some sort of, you know, institutional whatever, but like, you know, it's like CBGB's, you know, I mean, it's one of those, or Hard Rock icon, back in the day. Yeah, it is. It's an iconic venue in LA. And so the fact that you have played there and, shall we say,
playing there again,
nailed it so fucking hard that the whiskey wants them back. Look at that. All right. So right there. Awesome. So you definitely are doing a lot right. And I think, you know, just to kind of sort of, you know, bookend the conversation about ambition and, you know, we may come back to the concepts or whatever as we go. But I mean, I think that I appreciate that you are upfront about that. You know, I said the same thing to Sepsis, you know, because some people will be clearly marketing themselves, but then acting like they don't care whether they do well or not. And again, I don't judge. I really try not to judge anybody for anything, except for like two people I know in my real life, but that's a whole other story and they deserve it. But, you know, that I don't judge that, you know, but I think people will know, you know, what the motivations are there. And if you're upfront about it, then the worst somebody could say is that, all right, this person's really ambitious and they're going for it. And nothing is wrong with that. Right.
Right.
But I love that you are doing it in a way that is still inclusionary and supportive and built around community. And you don't even run your social media like a machine. You really don't. It still feels very personal. You know, and it still feels very, and that doesn't seem manufactured to me either, because there are those pages too, where it's like, look how regular we are. Did you get the shot? You know, and like, you can feel it. You can feel that it's engineered genuineness, which doesn't land right, you know? And so I love that you're doing what you need to do to get where you want to go, but you're not stepping on people's necks on the way. You know, you're still, you know, and I think that's very cool that what you're saying about, you know, you don't even necessarily want a label, because you're right. As soon as you get signed, all of the you know, the one of the biggest benefits about being an indie musician is that you do whatever the fuck you want to do.
Exactly. And that to me is like, that is, oh man, like labels, you know, and that, oh God, that's a whole other conversation, but labels, you know, they take it and they, right. They take
what else am I doing? Yeah. So.
And they take that idea, right? They take your art and they go, how can we flip it and turn it so it's commercially awesome?
Right.
And it's going to make us a lot of money. And some of those bands work, some of those bands don't. But there's always a few that do. And those are the ones that really just, they push, you know, and they push hard. And, you know, and like, so one of my favorite influences is My Chemical Romance. I love that band. And so like, I just watched for the first time somehow their 2003 or 2005 documentary. And it was all of it. It was like 2 hours worth of behind the scenes stuff from My Chemical Romance. And I geeked out, you know, but
I was going to say, you must have been in heaven. Yeah.
Oh, I was, I have a tattoo of, for My Chemical Romance.
Oh,
like,
wow. Okay.
I love those guys.
Dedication right there.
Dedication. Yeah. And so I just I watched that and I was like, this is like, that's really cool, because that's kind of how I'm doing things. I'm just trying my best to like push all of the music as hard as I can and like deal with the business things the way the business should be dealt with, but keeping the art its own department, and
not letting it be controlled or influenced by the business end.
Right. And running
Gotcha.
the business end based on the creative end. Because
I see. So the creativity piece is the engine that's driving the machine of the marketing and the business. And and that's the way to do it, because look, I love that you are this, I can't tell because I'm not there, but you look like this statuesque, tall, bald, beautiful person standing there, in just tatted up with like skirt and tights and like boots and whatever, and in the cool glasses. You've got this whole look, and it's very much, I get the sense that that's who you are every day. Like that this is not something that you're putting on. This isn't an image that you're creating or whatever. And I love that. I love that. The thing about
that, right, is when I feel good about myself, that's the stuff that I wear. When I don't feel good about myself, it's like tank tops and swishy shorts, and we're gonna go to the gym, and then we're gonna go home.
Yeah,
and that's like my day to day around the house wear. But then there is definitely
I don't think you're in like corsets, at the grocery store or whatever. But I mean, but that's an interesting point, what you said about when you're feeling good about yourself, because you clearly do on stage. And it's interesting because I was watching back the very first video that pops up on your YouTube is a string of covers, gigs that you did, coffee house type stuff, and, out in the park or whatever. And you had some really interesting choices there too. I mean, it was, I love your arrangements. Like, for those who haven't watched it, you should go check them out. It's the songs are very cool. And the way that Bryce rearranges them is really interesting. Like, so you did a cover of Light My Fire by The Doors, but very different, and the audience was right there with you, and then you did a Clapton song, right? Old Love, and, you did Miss Carolina.
I don't recall Light My Fire.
I thought maybe I had the.
I thought it was a Doors song. No, it could have been.
I may be misremembering the name.
So that whole video, that is actually how I get my acoustic gigs. So I work a lot of corporate stuff still, right? And so that's like, if somebody needs me, then I send them that video, because that's more of here's my cover songs, right? This is what I can do and what I sound like and what I look like and all that. So that's really what that video's for. Well, but it's also one of those it's music.
Yeah, and I did it, so I. But where I was going with that was that, like, it's interesting to me that you are a different Bryce in those videos. Your clothing is different. Your demeanor is different. You seem much quieter. It's definitely a different vibe, than you, on stage doing Stratosphere, and just like screaming your sweet little heart out and like all, and I mean, it's, and I get the sense that they are both you. So it's not like you're, putting on an act or whatever, but it's also, just as an aside, very smart to have clips and EPK stuff that you can give for different things, because the people who are going to want to hire you to play the Whiskey or some other big stage venue are not the people who are going to want to hire you for a wedding or a backyard party necessarily, or not, and sometimes like a restaurant or coffee house,
right,
you have to be different things. Well, right? There is a little bit of an overlap, but
it depends on the clients that like know you and they've seen you before, and they're like, "Hey, we saw your band at Where and Where. We want you to come to our party for whatever." Oh,
those
great,
are the cool parties, yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones that are so always fun, because like they know you, it's fun. So not like 90, 73-year-olds who want you to play exclusively ABBA music for 3 hours or whatever.
It's like a different kind of gig, but I do, and again, I think it's where what I meant to about your being in the sweet spot with all of this stuff is that, it is very clever from a marketing standpoint to have Coffee House Bryce and, you know, corporate gig Bryce, and then, you know, just fucking light it up, you know, big bar venue, you know, iconic whiskey Bryce, and to have those things. But where it works is that you are genuinely inhabiting all of those roles honestly. You know, you're not like pretending to be, you know, the rock star that gets on stage, but you're really the coffee house person, and you're not pretending to be the coffee house person, but you're really like the corporate, you know what I mean? Like I like that you're you. And
it's
so
a lot. Well, thank you.
yeah, but no, but well, I mean, I like you
else.
too, but I mean, like, I like that you, because I have a real radar for that. I have a good bullshit detector. I'm from New York. I'm Italian. I have, you know, a big mouth, and I'm very empathic, so I can pick up on people and read bullshit very quickly. And I didn't get any of that. And one of the things that most obliterated any chance that that was going to land for me with you is just the sheer lit up, sparkly firework joy that you get from being on stage, and it is all over you. Like that's why one of my favorite things that I watched of yours, while the official videos are great and we're going to go through them soon, you're talking about them, but when you did put your Stratosphere clip on stage, and now that's an unreleased song, so if anybody's going, wait, which one is that, you got to go on YouTube and you can hear it and watch it there. But it was just such unbridled joy, and you know, and it made me laugh because, you know, you're on and you're performing, and, you know, and as I said, you know, you're singing your heart out, you're screaming your heart out, and I was like, whoa, okay, that's a whole other Bryce there too, with the screaming vocals and all of that. And then the thing wraps up, you know, this very dramatic, you know, on your guitar. And then, you know, you walk to the, you know, I guess your setup or whatever. And you're like, yeah, do you like that shit? I was just like, see, it's Bryce. Like that to me was sort of cool that you weren't like, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, and yeah, you're like, is everybody having a good time? But we all have to say that on stage, right? But like,
yeah, exactly.
I loved that your first reaction after just lighting it up for 5 minutes with that song was to be like, oh, do you guys like that shit? And it was just like, it was so personable and so friendly and so real, and I love that. So
that's the, you know, I try to keep that, right? Like,
please do, because
it's one of those things that I've never,
well.
I really just like the people that are like, I'm the biggest thing in the industry, and you know, they have that cocky attitude about them, especially and even on and off stage. You know, on stage is one thing, right? You're selling a product.
It's bravado. Yeah, absolutely.
Off stage, that same person drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're humble and if you're genuine and if you just play the way you're supposed to play, and in that saying, play the way you're supposed to play,
exactly,
not anybody else, right?
That's right.
And if you play the things that you want to do, and to, I guess, use one of my song titles, play the things you want to do your way. There it was. I could, you know, it really
look at the
resonates,
marketing machine.
Right?
Look at them; they're just going and going, and that was
just.
But
really,
play your music your way. Be you.
And it resonates with people, you know, because believe it or not, like I said earlier, there's the audience for every artist. And so if you are your audience will come to you. And so that's just what you have to do. And so, you know, if you are that person on and off stage, that's great. I definitely won't like you, right? But if you're very cool off stage, you're a person off stage.
That's it. Be a rock star on stage and be a human being off stage. That's exactly right.
Exactly. And, you know,
but
try to keep it, you know, I don't know. I like being, you know, just me, I guess, you know. I don't love the facade games, but then there comes branding, you know, and how do you brand that, you know? And then it's like, well, I mean, how many other guitar players have done the same thing? How many other artists have done the exact same thing? You just have to find what works and try to leverage it.
Well, and that's why the shittiest part of the business is that it doesn't necessarily come down to who's the most talented. It doesn't necessarily come down to who does the thing that many people do the best. It can, but I mean, you know, if being in this indie community and doing this show has taught me anything, it's that the wrong people tend to be on the radio and in the arenas. And I mean, when I say the wrong people, look, I mean, fine, you know, Taylor Swift, I'm trying to I'm so like steeped in the community. I'm like, who are other famous actual like signed celebrities or whatever, like, or a Kanye or whatever, like,
Sure.
I mean, fine. As you're saying, there's an audience for every artist. And, as I always say, my grandmother, there's a lid for every pot. So I get that. And I'm not shitting on anybody's, I don't, as we say, our older one always says, don't yuck my yum. I'm not yucking anybody's yum here, but like, it's, I listen to a Bryce Evans, or I listen to a Dion Powder Band, or I listen to a Steam Slicer or a Death Pigeon. And I go, why is this shit that is, and that's not the shit. The shit is where I'm going with this. So hang in with me, guys. You too. Why is this shit on the radio that's on the radio and these people are not? Like, what is going on? And it comes down to what? Connections, money, luck, location, connections, money,
playing,
luck.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, because it's certainly not the people who work the hardest. It's certainly not the people who are the most talented. It is really about
it comes down to who you meet.
That's it. And
it's who in this industry. It really is.
And it's horrible. I mean, I know of musicians who are churning out album after album after album because, they have a rich family or they, whatever. And the music is just abysmal. Like, but there's so much of it too. It's like, wow, this food is horrible and thanks for the double serving, but like, but they're going to get eyes and ears on them because of who they know or who they are or who they're connected to or whatever. And it's the most maddening thing. And I think it's why so many musicians give up, right? Because
can I say something about that?
Please say something.
So I'm a firm believer in you create your own opportunities and you create your own luck. So for instance, it was about so just after 2020, I had released a few songs beginning of 2021, somewhere in there. And, I really wanted a guitar sponsorship. And so I was like, okay, going to try my best, and, was just trying to post as much as I could. Right. I was working hard. I was doing the consistency thing. And then, I was actively looking, right? Like I was looking for smaller guitar companies because I know that I'm not going to get accepted by Fender or Gibson right now, or
they're going to go for
or
Clapton,
any of those
or exactly,
right. They're going for much bigger artists than myself, but in order to like, I'm huge into like vibrational spirituality stuff. So in order to like grasp the things that you want, it has to be on the plane that you're at this point in time. And if you don't have access to those things, it's only because you haven't figured out a way to get yourself from the vibration that you're on in your current life to the vibration that is at. Right. Okay. And so once your vibrations start to match up, you start to attract the things like that. And so my whole thinking is when I got my guitar sponsorship, I was like, well, I'm not a huge artist.
Kanoni Keen, Russian guitars. We want a name check, definitely.
One of these, buy one.
There it is. Look at that beautiful.
If you need one, call me.
Butterscotch guitar.
Send me a
Love the
or
guitar,
whatever.
And it's a great tone on that guitar too.
I love that guitar.
Actually, you guys can hear it in action. There is on Bryce's YouTube. It's one of the very earliest videos, maybe the second one.
Heart
it's
Times?
Well, no, but you have the video about the Kanoni Keen, like you have where you're actually playing it through. Yeah, and so people can hear the tone and all of it. It's beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful looking guitar. But anyway, so you were saying, anyways,
I got that that sponsorship, right? And so when I got it, I was actively working and making sure that my socials were like up to date and they were current, and I was constantly posting, right? Because you kind of need to do that to be a sponsored artist, right? Yep. They want to see that you're working, and anybody in the industry wants to see that you're working. And if you're just one of those people that's like, I'm over here and I'm making tons of music, right? I'm posting tons of music, but I post on my social like maybe once a year. I send out an email maybe when I get a gig. Right. And I'm not actively working to get these gigs, right? That is not like the work ethic that people in the industry want to see. And so if you start to like get onto that vibration, right, and you start to do what they're doing, like is going to attract like, and all of a sudden things will start to come to you. So when I was like searching for that guitar sponsorship, I was actively doing that. I was looking for guitar companies and I found them. And I was like, oh, they're looking for artists. That's cool. Let's give it my best shot. Well, at that point in time, The pandemic was awful, but it did bring me some very good opportunities. And one of those opportunities was a mix with Kevin Shirley on one of my songs, right? That has yet to be released. I was just listening to that the other day, and I'm like, I need to really release this song. But anyways, I got a mix done from him. And for those of you that don't know who he is, that's like Led Zeppelin. It was an album that came out in like the late 90s. So Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Black Country Communion, Joe Bonamassa's current producer, so on and so forth, right? And it was just this constant, like, he's a huge guy. And so I was
sure
so lucky.
Yeah.
I was so lucky to find that like opportunity, because he posted something on his Instagram like, hey, I'm doing mixes for artists. If you want one, please contact me and we could see if we work together. Yeah. And so I had just gotten that, right? And so that opportunity came, and then I was like, well, I want to now be a sponsored guitarist. And so I was able to use my experience to gain that, because it was like, well, I've worked with this producer, like I'm currently working on getting into this bigger band, and I've released all this music, and here's my socials, they're up to date, right? And so it's like I created that opportunity. So but you're right. Like the people that have those connections already, they didn't have to do all that. They're just like, hey, Bob, can you call John and have him,
Right. Exactly. And I think that's the thing. You're right. And you refined my point, and it's an important, refinement, that there is that small faction where it is people who work really hard and, bust their asses and do all the things they need to do, and then also make it, so it's not like that never happens, but I do think it tends to be the exception to the rule. But it's, and I think unfortunately a lot of those artists tend to, if we know them, somebody where it was like a quirky little one-hit wonder or something, and, people were like, oh, this is great, but it was like a novelty. But then, I mean, like, so like Gautier, for example, like, this is a band that Greg is always telling me, like, okay, everybody knows somebody that I used to know. Everybody knows that song, and, there's even a meme online, like this guy, like, did this one song and then just dipped completely, and all we heard during that, I don't remember when it was, 2017, 20, somebody that you used to know. And like, everybody knew that song. But, Greg is sit there and go, but the whole album is great, and it's like, I always wonder about that. Is it like why people become one-hit wonders? It's not because they only have one great song. It's because they have either one song that fits into what people want to keep hearing, and then so all of their songs are popular, but they tend to be more similar to each other. Or you have somebody that has an album that's great, and they have a bunch of songs that are terrific, but there's one that's more commercially acceptable.
Perfect example.
And so they're
is like Seether, Finding Beauty in Negative Spaces, I think is the name of that album. The one with it's the song I hate the most on the album too. I'll think of it in a second. But that album made me fall in love with Seether. I hated the commercial whatever song that is, right? I had like listened to whichever song is super famous right around like 2005 or whatever, but I was like, I don't like
the one
that
about
song.
the Amy Lee, like that whole like fire back.
I don't.
Kyle from Narok is
so.
sitting there just quietly screaming before falling asleep immediately afterwards, because you're gonna look it up. But yeah, so and it's funny because I think I know what song you mean, but I can never ever remember the name of a single.
The name of that song is Fake It.
Okay.
I hated that song. I still hate that song, but the rest of the album is amazing because that song is so commercially perfect, and the rest of them are not. I mean, they have a song on there. Can I cuss on here? Is that okay?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Oh, well, okay. So the song Fuck Me Like You Hate Me, right? Like that song is not going to get airtime.
No.
Like, especially at that point in time, it's not going to get airtime. So it's one of those like
it would have to be Forget Me Like You Hate Me, right? We'll do the CeeLo maybe.
Exactly. But that's not what the band is about, right? Like that's Seether. I mean, come on, right? So
exactly. It's kind of in the name.
Yeah, you kind of have to, I think, to be a successful artist, finding the things that people like, amplifying those, but don't forget that this is your art. And if you forget that, then maybe it won't work so well anymore, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's a good place for us to kind of move into the idea that you did start, as we said, in more of a blues rock kind of genre. And again, you know, there's always been rock in there. There's always been stuff that you could theoretically pull out as being vaguely alt rock. But so, I mean, I guess that, you know, you said Caged was your very first one. You know, that was about 1.5 years ago, I think February of 2021, right? And so,
yeah, that sounds right.
And then, you know, Caged and I think Stand Up, Alienated, you know, these are more like, I think even Your Way, really, still more in that vein, right? You know, Devil's, you've got all these songs, Hard Times. And then Hurricanes happens, right? And it moves you into more of an alt rock. So talk to me about, you know, starting in a blues rock, you know, genre and doing it very well, by the way. You know, I mean, it's not like you changed what you were doing because it wasn't working or anything like that. It was clearly working. But so, you know, what made blues rock your jam to begin with? And then why did you sort of decide to switch over to more of an alt rock genre?
Sure. Okay, so when I refound Joe Bonamassa, that was a sound like I need to play guitar like that.
Yeah.
You know, like I had learned when I was younger, before I'd moved to North Carolina, a lot about Clapton. I learned a lot of his licks. Like I would just sit in my room. I wouldn't do my homework, right? Like I failed classes because I was constantly playing guitar.
Yeah.
And
there are people in the comments going, me too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, like that's what I did. And when I did that, you know, I really started to like love the blues, right? Because it's Clapton. And so that kind of happened. Found Joe Bonamassa when I was older. And then right before we moved back to North Carolina, I was like, that's what I need to play like. Like that's my next bar of excellence for myself to reach.
And by the way, I'm going to interrupt Bryce here for a second, guys. Bryce's guitar playing is fucking ridiculous. So like, I mean, I think you get a sense of that already from what we've been. No, but really like, it's all good, the music, but your guitar playing is definitely a massive highlight in every single song. I mean, like, you know, it's just like in Hurricanes, that scorching solo, you know, toward the end. And like, it just, and once I had listened to one or two of your songs, and I promise I'll shut up and let you get back to Joe and all of that. But like, I would get to a point where I'd be maybe like 2, 3, 4 minutes in, and I'd be like, okay, it's coming. I know it's coming. I know the solo is coming, and I know it's going to be great. You know, and it's like, and especially with blues, because I've always felt like, and this is not a slight in the slightest, but that most, you know, AAB standard blues, whatever stuff is pretty much, you know, in the same way that for me, when I could still eat dairy, baked potatoes were like a vehicle for lots of sour cream and butter.
Sure.
Like those blues songs are mostly like, it's like, okay, we'll do like a couple of, you know, and then we're going into this amazing solo, and it's all kind of designed to get you there. You know, so they kind of get the lyrics out of the way, they kind of get all the rest of it out of the way, and then there's just like this 4-minute solo, and that's what the song is. But so I got to that with you where I was kind of like, not that the rest of the song isn't good, but I was just like, oh, it's coming. So again, the fact that you can do that and you can make music like that, you know, I think what you were setting out to do and sounding like Joe and, you know, making that kind of music, you definitely got good at it. So I'll let you go back to it. But I had to love up your guitar playing because I
appreciate that. I really do. 23 years of playing, you know, I appreciate those compliments.
I know people who've played for longer and aren't that good. So it's not just about the time.
So do I. Yes, so do I. And so, you know, he really inspired me, right? And he's like the #1 best-selling blues guitarist in the world. And so I was like, if I could sound like that, I'm going to have some measure of success.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's a theory. Let's go with that, you know? And so I really tried to get that whole like cascading pentatonic thing that he does, which honestly, all of the recordings, every single one of them doesn't have that. The new ones will, because I wasn't able to do that thing then. And now I do it very well. And so I'm like, okay, now that has to be in a solo. And it's a multiple now of the new songs that we're writing.
Very cool.
So it's going to, you know, it's going to twist a little bit. But so like blues rock for me was good and fun and fine. But then I got to a point where, little tiny preface, I had in my teenage years listened to a bunch of stuff like Seether and 3 Days Grace and My Chemical Romance and you know, all those alt rock bands. And so that was really like, that was when I was that age and that like malleable age, I was very influenced by. And I just fell in love with the lyrics and I fell in love with the songwriting and just the messages that it put across to so many fans, especially like, you know, 2004 to 2008, right? Like that was like the emo scene and I was the age to be in the emo scene. And so it was just so cool to like see it all coming together and all these great bands and what it did to the culture. And so that for me is really kind of what moved me from blues rock to alt rock. And the reason for that is so I was learning all this Joe stuff, still one of my favorite artists. And like Eric Gales, who I just went and saw last week, he's amazing. All of those guys really kind of just like influenced my guitar playing. But my songwriting and the way I felt about the world and the way I still view the world is very much so more of a like alt rock type of lens, right? And so I went to the When We Were Young Fest last October, like the first one with My Chemical Romance and
I remember seeing the insane poster with
Paramore and The Used and all those guys. All the bands that I hadn't seen or I had seen, but I was seeing again. And that crowd was like 60,000 people deep. And when Paramore came on, she was singing one of her many, many very, very, very catchy songs, right? And she stopped singing and the entire audience sang it perfectly, you know? And the voice of the audience was so powerful. It gave me goosebumps. And so it was like, and it was just like, you know what? That's the scene that I want. Those are the fans I want. This is the feeling I want. I want people to feel this way when they're in front of me as I'm playing my songs that connected with their lives. Like that's what I need to do. And something just told me like, move more alt rock, you know? And so I came back from that trip because it was a vacation. That was when I got engaged. And so it was just like one of those, like, I'm going to set music down for a week. I'm going to walk away from it. And I came back with so many new ideas. You know, it was a great vacation and a reflection period. And that's when I basically told Colin and I told our bass player at the time. And I was just like, yeah, we're going in an alt rock direction. Like, if you don't want to do that.
Was there any pushback on that? Or
there was not,
because they were
not at
with
all.
You, so,
one of Colin's influences, you know, he loves like Dream Theater, right? And Mike Portnoy. And Benny Greb, right? So who's a kind of like a jazz player, right?
So definitely different influences there. But,
and he's very good at like, you know, John Bonham, right? He can do John Bonham like a beast, and all of his like little nuances. And just to hear Colin talk about drumming is amazing, right? So anyways, he was like, I'm all for it because it's more technical. You know, like blues isn't very technical.
Me,
right? It's
definitely more to chew on for a drummer, 100%.
And so he's like, he's that kind of, he has that mind. You know, he's very like a technically minded drummer, and he likes to throw in a lot of, you know, weird like I don't even know what they call him. Not a drummer. All the weird little techniques, you know, but they sound great. And he loves to not be bored when he's playing. And I got the sense that he was also bored with that, you know. And so when I decided to move to alt rock, he's like, yes, let's do it. It's awesome. My bass player's like, yeah, I like rock more anyways, you know. And so we were just like, oh, great, this is going to work out well. And that's kind of why the name of the band is what it is, right? Because I like to make my own decisions. Like I've said before, I want to be in control of my business. And that's exactly how that went out. And nobody gave me pushback, thankfully.
Well, and that's the thing. You could just remove the Black Cats if you needed to. Like, you know, I mean, like it doesn't, not that you want to just throw Colin aside and, you know, whoever ends up coming in for bass, but like it is, you are the, you know, the lightning rod of the band, clearly. Like it's your project, it's your stuff, it's your, you know, it's and you know, you're the
huge shout out to Colin though, right?
We love Colin. I don't even know Colin, but we love Colin. And talk again, you mentioned it, but briefly, which ones we can hear Colin playing on?
Sure. So Colin plays on Hurricanes.
Right.
Colin plays on Devil's Hall. And so like Devil's Hall is very much so more I cannot think of the name of the Pink Floyd drummer. He'd be punching me in my face right now. But yeah, he's very influenced by him. And on this last road trip to California, I found out a lot about like his influences with the drummer from Pink Floyd. And so in Devil's Hall, you can hear a lot of that. a lot of that kind of playing. And then in Hurricanes, you know, you have all these like little grace notes on the snare drum, right? And all these like cymbal like metric modulation things that he's doing. And so like
lots of intricacy, lots
amazing.
of
Yeah. And so he played on both of those, but he's really great. And I love that Colin goes with the flow with what I say. But the other thing too is when me and Colin were in our old band Yuppie Wagon, which is what Hurricanes and Devil's Hall is.
Right.
You know, that was very much so a band feel. We all have decisions, you know, and where we all have opinions, and then we try to make one band decision that's going to affect our trajectory.
That's fun.
And so I really like it. It's been great getting to know Colin over the past 5 years. Like, we're good buddies. And we both really understand where we want to go with our careers. And we know that we both have enough talent that with enough of the right business lens of things, we can make that work. And so once we kind of moved to alt rock, and I made that decision, Colin has always been like, yeah, I like your ideas. And if he doesn't like them, he'll be like, well, here's my idea. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think of that? You know? And so then he definitely allows me to have last say, but he doesn't just like let it go.
Right.
You know,
He's not just like, whatever you say, whatever you say. Yeah. No,
he contributes a lot into a lot of ideas, especially time changes with songs. I'll like bring him a song and then he'll be like, oh, okay, well, let's go here and we'll go like 6/8, or let's go down to 7 or 5 or stuff like that. Right. So
again, not anything you could do with blues.
Right. Yeah. And so, you know, it was nice with Colin to be able to just like, let's do this. We make decisions together. And that whole concept of just like being a band, but having somebody who is willing to make executive decisions. Yeah. That works. And
not be a dick about it too.
And not be a dick. Well, it's just one of those things, like, we all understand each other. Like, like when because I'm the one that gets the gigs, right? I'm the one who has the LLC. I'm the one who has the van. I'm the one who has the big PA system. Like, I'm just like, I want them to come with me, you know, and the musicians that are in my close circle that work for me and they work with me on things. It just creates a community, right? Within your band. And then you start to really care for each other. And then that just helps things along. And so,
but I think you made an important point there that I want to just pull out for a second, that, you know, if everyone in the band were doing an equal amount of work, equally owned the gear, equally, you know, pounded the pavement for gigs, equally did everything, and then one of them was like, and by the way, I'm the front person, this is my project. I mean, like, I can't tell you how many times over the years I had, you know, venue owners, you know, fans, even sometimes members of the band who would be like, okay, you know, because I'm always the only chick in every band I've ever been in. I'm the only chick with 3, 4, 5, 6 guys. Like, it's like the weirdest OnlyFans ever. But like, you know, and like, I'm always the one that's, you know, up front singing, and I'm the only woman. And so, you know, venue owners, whatever, will say, put your face on the poster, put your face on the this, you know, if you film a video, if you whatever, like, you be the one in it. Don't worry. Nobody wants to see the guys. Nobody would. And it used to piss everyone off when I was like, no, because it's not just me. I'm not anything without my band.
Right. Absolutely.
That's a different thing. Okay. I think in a situation like yours, where, yes, you know, your name is at the top of the band name and all of that, and you are very upfront about the fact that, as we've said, it's your project and everything. It's not because you're doing an equal amount of work to everyone else. It's about you're busting your ass. You are creating the brand. You are doing all the marketing. You are the one getting the gigs. You are probably the one who owns most of the gear. And so it's not, I don't want people to think that you're saying, oh, you know, we're all doing the same amount of work and then I'm putting myself out front. That's not what this is. It's a different thing. And like you said, you're bringing these musicians with you, which you don't have to do. You could just hire a band to learn your stuff wherever you go.
Exactly.
But that's not what you want to do either.
You know, and with that, right, like, that's where Colin, and being with him for like 5 years now as my drummer, we've made that friendship and that connection with each other that we understand how we work, you know? And so it's like, when I come to him with like, hey, what can we do different? And he'll give me something. And if I like it, then it's like, cool, let's do that, you know? Yeah. And he contributes money into the band from his pay sometimes. Right. And we both like, hey, let's, you know, let us do this show. And if we have to like buy into this show, then both
yeah.
get together and we pitch up the money for it. Right.
Right.
And we just like try our best to do as much as we can, together with things. But it was one of those, when this band started, it was so much more a corporate thing, you know, and so I could exactly change out the black cats, as it were, as I needed. And I had to in the beginning, right? Like I had to, Colin was playing with that other band, and
you didn't have
really have
the
a dedicated bass player until I did. And then it was me and him for a while, and then things didn't work out with me and him. And so then like Colin, all that went down. And so, you know, it's kind of traded back and forth, but it's always been like, I like having people around me that, one, are better players. Always like surrounding myself with better musicians. And then two, smart. Two, having people that care enough about your brand to work for it and towards it. Right. And those are the ones that, like, I truly feel that the bands that think that way, like Foo Fighters is a great example, right? Like Dave Grohl is like end all be all decision maker for that group, but it's still the Foo Fighters.
That's right.
And so having that mentality of like, hey, this is the song, whoever wrote the song, that doesn't matter, but let's bring it here and let's try to play it, and let's see what we can do to change it and make it like our own, right? And once we do that, then we'll start like practicing it and putting it out there. And so I really think that those bands that do that and that are in control creatively have so much more attention to their detail, to their brand, to their sound, than bands that go through record labels and just get destroyed, you know? Because it's like what's in their best interest.
Whatever the flavor of the day is, right? You know, I mean, like there's this great show on Netflix that Greg and I have been watching. I forget what it's called, but it's something like This Is Music, or I'll have to put it in the comments when this airs so I can tell people what the hell it's talking about. But it goes through episodes of like these really random topics. And so, you know, one of them was, you know, the idea of how like so many of these, you know, bands will come out of Sweden, you know, and it's all because of Max Martin and whatever, blah, blah, blah. But they were talking about how Oasis and, you know, this idea of Britpop, you know, became like sort of the zeitgeist antidote to grunge at the time, right? And so, you know, you had all these, you know, these very different kinds of sounds, but people who weren't really Britpop bands were rebranding themselves as Britpop bands, because every Britpop band or band that called themselves a Britpop band just blew up because that was the genre. But then they all just died because the genre, you know, kind of ran out of steam, and then it wasn't the music. And it's like what you're saying. They weren't making the music that was them. They were making the music that was desirable. And then as soon as that, and the problem with that is that if you're the flavor of the day, eventually people are going to get tired of that flavor, you know, and then what do you do? You know, then you have to all of a sudden rebrand yourself again. That's not going to work.
That's the whole thing, right? Forever. You almost have to be like an endless flavor, and you always have to continue to offer things that are not quite the same as what's going on, but parallel. And you
also have to be a flavor that isn't like every other flavor too, you know, because I mean, like there are bands that they do their thing, but they're the only ones who do that thing. And so if you want that thing, you have to go to them, you know? Like so
War.
No, I mean, I think, your ICP or whatever, but I mean, like, and it is what you're saying is also smart, you know, the idea that, you know, you are, you know, it's egalitarian enough that it's not like, you know, Colin comes in and says, hey, you know, this is what I think. And you're like, no, it is my project. And you must, you know, just kneel before Zod and like do whatever I say. But you are driving the whole thing, you know, and ultimately it rises and falls on you. I mean, especially as a front person who sings and plays guitar. Like, unfortunately, most people don't pay attention to the rhythm section. Most people don't think about the drummer and don't think about the bass player, and they should, but they don't. So, I mean,
and that's right. Like, so when we write songs too, it's like, let's put as much of your talent on showcase as we're putting on mine. And so I have a new song that we've been writing that Colin has been doing this drum solo in on our live shots, you know, and we're thinking about probably putting it into the actual song. And so it's like how, you know, use the talents that you have, right? Like, don't get in such a mindset of like, I'm everything there ever was, and I'm the end all be all to rock and roll or whatever, you know. And
I'm a golden god,
exactly. Like, because you're not, if you're thinking that, and if you are thinking that and you're right about it, then you are far ahead of
Right. You don't need to worry about
very
other
many
people. Yeah, exactly. Who are
But
you
that's not the
competing with at that
population, you know. The population thinks of it as like, I'm the best and I wrote all these songs and they're my songs.
Right,
And it's like,
right,
who
right.
cares? Just play the music, you know? And so
Right. Right.
that's what I like about, like, with Colin. He's been influencing so much more, especially on the new songs with like time changes with different grooves. And yeah, it's really coming along nicely, I think. So
And so, I mean, to kind of segue then into, you know, back into the specific music more, like it sounds like Hurricanes was a very specific creative process for you. But in general, in terms of songwriting, you mentioned when I asked the question that you approach it from a number of different ways. So let's get more into that. Like what,
Sure.
you know, how do you tend to write your stuff generally? Do you come up with riffs? Do you come up with lyrics? Do you come up with melody lines? Most of the time it's different for each song, but like, do you have a thing that usually starts you, or how does that
for the
work?
most part, for me, it's all kind of based on guitar, right? So
Okay, that makes sense.
and it always comes at the worst time, because I'll either have like, I need to get this part of my email list done today so I can send that off tomorrow, but I'm just going to practice for 10 minutes, which then turns into 3 hours because I'm writing this song, you know. And it's like, no, I can't do this today. But when that usually happens, it's usually because I'm sitting there getting ready to practice certain techniques, or
Okay.
I start just playing to practice, you know. And when that starts to happen, I come up with a cool little lick or riff or something, and I'm like, well, that was cool, and I repeat it. Then I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then I start to like listen to, so we had that song Stratosphere.
Yeah.
When that was coming through my amplifier, through the specific guitar, through the specific pedals on that setting, right? It was like, this is a sound. And the only thing that popped into my head was, this is like the stratosphere. Like, this is what that sounds like. That big, like one of the chords, I just played one of the chords. It was just so broad and huge because it's in D standard with like drop C, you know? And so it's like this huge, big, like massive.
It's a very domineering kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we were like, you know, I said that, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to totally, like that's stratosphere sounding. So then I started thinking about that concept. I was like, well, the stratosphere, like, what is that? And you know, how high up is that? And so, you know, like the beginning of that song, don't you know that you are brighter than the rest? Can't you see that light shining from your chest? Which is basically saying like, you're brighter than all the rest. And so when I write lyrics, I try to connect with other people. I try to think of things that like, what could anybody else feel in general terms, you know?
Gotcha.
And so like, we all kind of feel special to ourselves, right? So don't you know that you are brighter than the rest, right? And can't you see that light shining from your chest? Like, you have this light and you can go and achieve the things that you want to achieve if you just apply that. And so then the chorus is like, get yourself out of here, out to the stratosphere, let the wind take you higher. Those lies they tell you pass by sky blue all the way to the stratosphere. And so that whole song is kind of about like, you can push yourself further than you think. You can achieve things.
Don't limit yourself. Don't limit yourself.
And just do it, you know. And the reason I wrote that song, and it was funny that Stratosphere popped into my head, was because we had just booked this tour that we've been on throughout the summer. Like, it's not like a massive tour, it's not like every day, but it's legs, you know.
But and you've been going for and I mean, you know, you're all over the place, you know, Colorado, Missouri, you're going to do Wyoming, right? You've been in Kansas, you've got, you know, and obviously
Kansas, California,
and I mean,
Arizona.
obviously the whiskey. So yeah, LA, right? So, I mean, you're
so many different spots.
It's sizable, yeah.
And so it's like, that's kind of stratospheric, you know, for a little band from Denver. That when me and Colin were in our last band where I met him, it was like, yeah, you know, it'd be really nice to play out of state one day. And now here we are as a different band playing so many different dates across the country throughout this whole summer. So, you know, being in the stratosphere, right? Like, you can do more than you think. Don't limit yourself, push yourself further. And so that's kind of how it kind of operates with me. It's like, I'll take an idea and I will flush that idea into, usually the riff comes first, and then I'll get the idea, and then I'll take that idea and try to like mold the idea of my title or of my, just the lyrics that'll come up. Like, if I just sing one line and I'm like, oh, that was a cool set of lyrics, how can I build off of that? And so I just try to extend the idea over over a song. And then
Yeah.
underneath all that, use songwriting theory of, kind of like, oh, what's the one? So like call and response, where the verse is calling out to a certain topic, and then the chorus is the response to that topic.
Right.
And then the next verse is the response to the topic, but also creating another call.
Right.
And then it's
so you're playing around with different song structures, you're playing around with different techniques. Yeah. And I mean, but what's cool about that though is that it's not done in a way that calls attention to it. Like I'm not sitting there going, okay, now he's doing a call and response song, and now he's doing this, and now he's, rather they're not doing this, they're not doing that, like it's, I also think that it's interesting to me, like Stratosphere specifically. And again, I know it's not released yet. When are you going to release that, by the way?
So
you're like, I don't know.
Well, we do kind of know. We've been talking about a lot of this kind of stuff.
Okay.
No, I can say. I just don't want to put a hard date on it because we don't have a release date.
Okay,
yet,
so but they're telling us this in theory, but this is not. Don't hold them to it. It may not.
Exactly.
Whatever. It may have come out by the time this is airing. It may not have. So this is the best guess. So okay,
it won't be that soon, but it will be hopefully sometime in later next year.
Oh, okay. Later next year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's already September, right?
Right. So you're talking like a year from now.
It'll be a while. Yep.
Wow.
Because we're trying to do a big old release and a pre-sale package, vinyls. I mean, like this is kind of a whole brand revamp thing. I gotcha. It takes a lot of planning is going to go into this thing.
Okay, so at some point it will come out.
It's coming.
But that song.
But you have it on YouTube, so go listen.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, people can. That's where I saw it. But I mean, that song I thought was really. I liked it so much, and I think I definitely heard different elements in there. Like I heard some Soundgarden, I heard some Heart-Shaped Box, Nirvana, I heard some. I mean, the rhythms of it almost remind me of Foxy Lady. Like, I mean, it's got so much going on, and again, like it's not that it sounds like those things, but it's evocative of feelings that I get when I listen to those things. And it's just, it's the first time I heard you screaming.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
that's a new thing.
So again, because alt rock, I don't tend to associate, and maybe I'm just missing something, but with screaming, that to me is more of a metal thing.
Metal, pop rock, screamo, emo, right? Like that's kind of the things that I was steeped in. And a lot of those bands
they're visceral in that song.
Thank
like
you.
You're not kind of like, yeah, it's like, ah, you're really screaming. So
it's definitely a guttural scream.
So talk to me about that, because that's a whole other dimension that you're adding there with that.
Yeah. So like, me and Colin both love metal, right? And we love that like alt scene of just, black clothes and makeup and being different and being who you are, but not caring. Like that's what the alt scene is all about. And so we really try to lean into that with this new stuff. And I'm just I love screaming. Like it's one of my favorite styles to do. It's so much fun. We have a song called Drowned that I don't think is like officially released. I don't think I put up like a video.
Anywhere. Yeah.
But that one, there is so much. There's a breakdown in that song. Right?
Oh,
like
look at you.
Metal scream breakdown. And so, it's like alt rock is definitely how I like to describe it. But, there's always that saying of like, you have that audience who you think you have the audience who you want to have, and then there's the audience that you actually have, right? And so like maybe we are more metal. I don't know. People have told us like Alice in Chains recently, and we hate that band. We can't stand it. But
really,
Colin called me. Yeah, Colin called me back.
They didn't say that, guys. Just skip this part of the interview. You have a lot of people.
I cannot stand that band.
Okay, you're owning it. So okay.
I don't care. Right. Whatever, man.
I'm glad I said Soundgarden and not Alice in Chains then, because you would have gotten up and just flipped the chair and walked away. Interview done, bitch. Motley
Crue, right? Just so many different bands that I never would have labeled myself, and so it's like I guess we're just gonna put it out and see what happens,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
what's nice is recently, so I just recently got one of my songs onto like the discovery part of a Spotify editorial playlist, right? So for those of you that don't know, if you just skip, if you're like on that playlist, the editorial playlist, and you're skipping songs, and you have the like enhance feature turned on, it'll throw in songs that it thinks go along with the playlist. And so mine got onto there, right?
That's very cool.
It was awesome. Yeah, it boosted those songs.
Which
plays,
song
like,
was it?
Sin's a Good Man's Brother.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting because it got onto like this like pop, more. I mean, there's some modern rock on there, but not a lot, and then rap and like all sorts of crazy stuff. But it was a Spotify editorial playlist, so it's like, well, like I don't really care. I don't know how it's working.
Wouldn't necessarily expect that with a Grand Funk Railroad cover, but okay. But I mean,
right,
but that
exactly.
But actually, I shouldn't just I mean, what I love about when you do covers is that your arrangements really change the song. And I mean,
I try my best.
with Sins, like I mean, I love the Middle Eastern kind of feel that you've got going in there at the beginning. It's also got a little bit of that sort of almost jangly Western kind of thing, but it's also very Middle Eastern. And like then I hear Allman Brothers, and what's cool is that when you get to the, I guess calling it the bridge section, that's a much more alt rock feel than, first of all, the first part of the song, and secondly, definitely much more than the original. And it's so different from the original that I understand why. And it's, it's always sort of like, okay, they've got all these great songs and then the cover blows up, right? Which is always like, but I think that's just a function of these are songs people know. And so they might show up in a playlist somewhere or whatever. Yeah. But like, I love what you do. I mean, even in the covers clip that we were talking about earlier, like, with Old Love or whatever, like you're not playing them, pardon the expression, you're not playing them straight. You're playing them, you're doing your version of them, which I think is tremendous, and it really, I think that's one big reason why the song is blowing up so much. So, and then sure, once you get on one of those discovery things, like then just it's getting fed to so many more people.
And that's the thing, right? Is like when you have that kind of like fuel and that movement, it pushes things in different directions, right? And you're very right. That is definitely a more alt rock section of that song, and very much so different than the original of that song. And so when like I got my first like artist radio, and it was like a lot of different stuff, kind of all like in the alt rock vein and like the indie rock vein, and some blues rock stuff, and so just recently the other day I went on to one of my the artist radio that I have, and I was looking through, and like a few of them were like more like kind of metal leaning type of things. And so I was like, okay, so maybe the whole
who you are,
like maybe the whole artist algorithm, along with Spotify watching your socials and all that kind of stuff. If anybody's ever taken a class on like Spotify and how they do their playlists, drop
a little knowledge, because I don't think most people have. I don't know this. So for example, if nothing else, you're telling me something I don't know.
So I watched, if you're not a part of Spotify Masterclass, go check that out. I'm pretty sure it's free. You just have to go sign up for your email address. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And they so this one was on how they work their playlisting. And so basically it had said, there's a pyramid of playlists, and on the top of the pyramid, there's those like 3 or 4 playlists that are like the huge ones, like 43 million likes and X amount of plays a day. That's like in the hundreds of thousands. And so, but that's like, those are like the pinnacle ones you want to be on. And then below that is all their editorial playlists for genres, moods, like times of day or coffee shops or, whatever.
Right.
And those
most
are
romantic playlists in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. And all those are like edited by Spotify editorials. And then at the bottom, there is, which is the base of the pyramid, right? So the widest portion is user created playlists. And so that's like what you and me would make, right? Or so many of the Band Together family has made with all of their playlists. So what happens is when your song gets placed onto more playlists, right? And if it's in a position where the song is with the correct feel, right? Like the correct genre,
Mhm.
it will start to, the more base playlists you can get it on, right? And the more of the base of the pyramid that you can cover, the more likely it is that it's getting played. The more likely, or the more it gets played, then the more Spotify has time to figure out, okay, so your song is mainly on playlists that have like, I don't know, 3 Days Grace or whoever may be on my playlist.
Yeah.
One that I can think of in particular is this guy named Julian's. He's amazing, super talented guitarist, but me and him connected on Instagram one day. I started liking and following him along. He started doing the same for me. And then he was like, hey, I put your new song, I think it was Hurricanes. I put that on one of my playlists and it has like a good bit of likes. I was like, dude, thanks so much. And so then I did the same for him. And so then when my artist radio came out, the first person below my song was Julian's, right? And so the next
let's just spell that so people know if they want to look him up. Is it
Julience?
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
yeah.
Very cool. Okay.
And so he was the first person on my radio. And so the master class talked about that. It was like, once we start to see where your songs are with other artists that are like you, we're going to then take your song, if we like it, for a playlist, and we're going to put that song onto our playlist at the very bottom. We will see how it does over the course of a week. If after a week it does very well, we're going to move it up in the playlist. And then if it does really well there, it'll eventually make it to number 1 over the course of a couple of weeks of that playlist. There, obviously, it's going to get more plays. Then they will take it and move it from that playlist to a slightly bigger playlist, put it at the bottom again. And so your song kind of crawls through the pyramid, right? Until you're at the point where the song is popular. Every playlist it's been on is working, it's pumping, it's being listened to, the song is working. That's when it's
rising to the top of all of those. Exactly. I see. Okay.
And so that's how I personally believe that I got Sins to go from just like base playlists onto the discovery part of that, because I think now what they're doing, this was probably a year ago that I watched that, but now I think what they're doing is they're using the masterclass, or they're using the not the masterclass, the discovery part of the playlist to see if the song is going to work to then be put on the bottom of the playlist. So I think they're kind of
that would make sense actually. Okay, great, because there weren't enough steps already.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But, okay, so no, but see, guys, look how helpful that is, and they didn't have to share that with us. So thank you for doing that, Bryce.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. But
go sign up for that. Every artist watching this should definitely go sign up for Spotify Masterclass, because it's not just that. You know, it's how to get your email list to work effectively. And each one's like an hour video that you sit and watch. And there's so much. I mean, I took like 10
I'm
pages.
Thinking Greg has homework now that he has to do for this podcast.
Yeah, thing's the bomb. I love Spotify Masterclass.
Yeah, no, that's it. But that's very interesting to me that you can also then aim what you want to, whatever genre of whatever song you want to really sort of push, then what your job has to be. You have to be making something that's true to what you want to make, but be enough like a 3 Days Grace or an MCR or whatever, that it's going to potentially land on a playlist like that and then be able to fly. So you have to keep it you have to keep it the song that you want to create, but you also need to be mindful of that. And I think it seems like to me that that's not something you necessarily need to do too much when you're writing the songs, because that's just the genre that you're in. Right. And so especially as somebody who loves these bands so much, even if it's subconsciously, you are probably being influenced by them to a point where, people who like your stuff will also like the stuff that you like, because that's the kind of music that you're making. So, but it's great to hear it codified like that, that there's actually a structure to it.
There is a system to it. Yeah.
Learn and use.
And they even say, in that video, like, people that try to sell you Spotify editorial spots do not exist. There's only one way to get onto them, and that is to submit the song
that makes
through
a lot of
your
sense,
artist profile.
Right.
They say it multiple times in that class, and it's they say when you go to put your song up, which should be 6 weeks before you release, send us the song in your because we'll already have it from your distributor, right?
Right.
So just submit it through your artist playlist, and then that way it gives us 6 weeks to look at all of your stats.
Yeah.
It looks at your social media. It looks at all that. And they even said that too, is like, in order to get onto a bigger playlist, the other thing we think of is taking an artist that is out there touring, out there getting shows, social medias are consistently updated. They're doing big things, right? They have big shows coming up. They're working
big
with
things
bands.
coming soon. Yeah. But actually coming. Yeah.
Absolutely. And they look at that, and they try to see like, well, if we give them this type of success, are they in the place to do that? So I personally think, because that song got onto that playlist like a week or 2 weeks before we went to the Whiskey A Go-Go. And so I think that what had happened is they still had that, and they were watching it because it was starting to get a lot of streams. I was up to a good amount there. I think I was right around like 19,000, 18,000 streams for that
tremendous.
song.
Yeah.
And then it hit that playlist, and now it's at like 23, 24, or maybe 25. I'm not really sure. I haven't looked in a while, but so it's one of those things like that's. I'm at that point where if success really happened with that song, and if that song took off and talent buyers were getting a hold of me like, hey, we want you to come to Florida, we want you to come to wherever. Right. I would have the ability to say, yeah, we can do that. We can come and do a show for you.
Right.
They even say in there, like, there's so many people that we do that for, that are at that stage, that are ready. Their song hits, it hits on the right playlist. And now all of a sudden they went from 10,000 followers on Facebook, and now they're over 100,000. And their monthly listeners went from 5,000 a month to however many thousand they have now.
And it only takes one is the thing. It only takes one. And I think that has to be the mentality for indie musicians, right? That it's, because it is tricky that with Spotify, you release an album, but there is that Spotify schedule, and I think a lot of people are releasing things as singles because it gives them more of a time advantage, if you're putting something out every 6 weeks or whatever, every 3 months, however, rather than putting out an album every 10 months or year, you're staying on the radar more.
Exactly. Yep.
It might not be what people want to do. I mean, like, I just talked to Steam Slicer yesterday, and Joel was like, no, these are very much albums that I had to make, and they had to be albums, and they would not have been, it wouldn't have made sense to release the first one as a single. He's like, but then these are, and so you do that when you can. And if you can't, you can't. But I mean, it's, I thank you for sharing that, because, I think a lot of people know that they have to play the game. Some people barely know where the field is, like me, where I'm just like, we had a thing, recently we weren't able to be online as much. And, Facebook is screaming at me, your numbers are in the red, you got to get your numbers up. And I'm like, and they're like, do this. And I was like, oh my God, stop yelling at me, and I don't know how to do this. I wish I did, because then I could get people more attention through the show and the page, whatever. But like, so for you to just even drop that little bit, I feel like I learned a bunch, just from that. You distilled, like 1 hour long class into, 10 minutes here or whatever. But that's a really good tip. So guys, Spotify Masterclass. Bryce is learning, and if they think it's useful, given what they want to do with their band,
why not try to better yourself and better your business, and always just learn something new? There's so many books out there that are about the music business. Read them. I mean, I have a whole bookshelf over here full of them. Right? Like, take the time to read those books, because one of those books could be the thing that clicks whatever it is that you need and you've been missing, and now you have it, and bam, things are working for you. And so learn things. It's great. Like Spotify Masterclass. That's great.
So before we start wrapping up, I wanted to just go through a couple of other specific songs with you, because I'm curious about some of them, and particularly the one that you released in April, Forest Fire. Very different kind of song from everything else that you have.
Yes.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm, I got my eyes closed. I'm listening to the lyrics, and I'm going, okay. I have my guess as to what the song
what's your guess? I want to know.
About, and I'm probably completely wrong.
Okay.
But I'm probably completely wrong, but I don't care. I'll say it. I thought maybe the lyrics were about the loss of a child or a miscarriage. That was what I took from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Am I right?
You are right.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well done, because you could, I mean, I was worried that was something I took from it that wasn't what you intended, because I mean, I've had 3 myself. I lost twins at 8 and 16 weeks, and then I lost another baby after that. So I know what that feeling is. And I just, the piano comes in, and it's very mournful, and you've got this very heavy sustain, and so already I'm in a certain mood. It's kind of a requiem almost of sorts,
Yeah.
rock reference, but and then the vocals come in, and I just I'm getting it again. You can't see, but like if I had hair on my arms, it would be standing up. I get the goosebumps, and it really, it's so
Aw,
different for you, and it's so raw. I mean, beautiful,
that.
not raw in the sense of being unpolished or anything like that, but
Yeah.
just raw and real. And so now having confirmed that that's what it's about, I'm hesitant to ask you to discuss the songwriting process on that.
Oh no, of course, absolutely.
You
I'm glad
do not
on that
have
one.
to at
I'm
all.
glad to on that one.
Okay.
So I hope you're not like constrained on time or anything.
No,
I
go
think we're
ahead.
okay.
Yeah.
So this one is like, so I have a niece, and I'm not going to really go into a lot of her history, but I can tell you that things have not been good
Okay.
for this poor woman. And so like throughout her life, so many things have gone wrong. And so she is married now, and so her and her wife wanted to have a kid, and they tried. Bam, here we are, right? And we had this kid coming, and they were going to call him Forest Fire. And so really close, couple months from pregnancy, and they lost him, right? And so it really devastated them, and it's so sad to see that my niece went through this after what she's already been through in her life. So all of that kind of happened, especially with the history of what went on. So it was really like, wow, this is like the worst person, the absolute fucking worst person for something like this to happen.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't deserve it. She's such a kind human, and I like horrible outcome with so many things. And such a trooper, one of those people that like keeps going, and I don't know how, but I love her to death. And so she was about like 5 or 6 before all these really bad things started happening to her, and I was around, I don't know, I guess I would have been I'd have been about 10 or 11 then. And so that's kind of when I was kind of getting into the music, and so I just kind of had to watch from the sidelines because I really never had time because I was so focused on my own goals. So I never had time to like catch up with her. And then I moved to North Carolina. And so then, we really got pulled apart, and we were really good buddies when she was like growing up in her like toddler years, and her young infancy years. And so when we started finally, like when I moved back and we started talking again, I was like, man, I miss my niece. Like my niece is a very cool, like grown up now. And it's very interesting to see, and so, so then that happened just this last year. And when I wrote that song, I was sitting there one day and I thought, I really need to give something to my niece and her wife for this, and I was like, well, there's only one thing that I know that I'm really good at, and that's music. And that's only one thing that I know that I think is not only a gift that you can have to just have and keep, but also something that you can continually look back on, and it will continually remind you of the person that you didn't get to meet, And so when I wrote it, it was very much so from a true point of like what really went on, and some of it's kind of like introspective on or not introspective, it's kind of extrospective on the situation, because I wasn't there for certain parts of it. Like there's a point at the end that says
in the hospital gown,
and the hook of the song, and in the hospital gown, you came in like a forest fire, and it's like basically about the person giving birth dying at that time, which she didn't. My niece is still with us, but so that was kind of one of those like, how can I take this and wrap it up, but also making it so meaningful to like help her remember, like, but you're still here, and that matters to a lot of us. And so that's definitely what that was about. And I was like, I'm definitely more on the vibrational point of things. But that was one of those, like, I think I asked the little dude to help me write that song. Like, you know, give me some, show me how I need to do this. And it came out the way that it did. And it was like, I didn't do a release plan for it. I didn't do, you know, like a photo shoot. I didn't do anything. I didn't do a music video. And I talked about it with them because I wanted them to be in it. I was like, let's make this like a known thing. It's going to be about, you know, losing a child, and it's going to be about a lesbian couple, right? So it strikes on so many different points. And I could have done all of that. I could have went hard on it with all of the marketing points, and it probably would have done decent. But the problem is that that's not what that song is about. You know, it was really a kind
you didn't want to commercialize their pain. So
exactly.
It was a tribute to Forrest.
And they did agree.
Yeah.
They did agree, right? Like they that picture is that child, right? That album cover is that.
Wow.
And so they gave me permission for that. They gave me permission for you know, to like do the music video with them in it, and to help steer the directions of the ideas. And I told them, I'm like, you know, that this could very well be like a publicity type of thing. Like, I don't want you to feel like I'm exploiting you. I want you to know how it's going to look, you know?
Right.
And they were fine with all of it. And it really came down to me just like, I don't want to do that.
Didn't feel right.
Want to do that. I
respect that so much, because it even if you hadn't intended it to be capitalizing or, you know, exploiting, it absolutely could have read that way. And I thought it was so beautiful that you had the sonogram, you know, picture there. And then that was it. That's the only clue that you give. If people aren't, because I'm not sure that everyone will know exactly what it's about. And I think that's fine. You know, it's because it could be about any kind of grief. It could be about any kind of loss. If you really think about, I mean, if you're paying attention to the lyrics, you know, you came in like a forest fire, and, you know, I could see, we're never going to get to know your name. I could see it all over their face. You know what I mean? Like, and that's where I was like, I remember sitting in that room and not watching the screen, but watching the face of the woman watching the screen. And I saw it on her face, and I just went, and my legs started to shake, you know, because that's it, you know, like and I already had known, but you know, when you know, and then when you see the person who knows, and then that's the moment where you're like, okay, well, that dream is over, you know, and it really, for someone who wasn't in it, I commend you on the lyrics, because you didn't write it from a place of presuming that you could inhabit that heartbreak. You didn't, you know, but it was written from her perspective, but in a way that felt genuine and not presumptive. Because I've read poems and I've heard songs by people, where they're writing from the perspective of someone who's gone through something they've never gone through. And I hate them for it so much, because it's like, how dare you think you know what that feels like? And I didn't get that from this. I mean, I
tried so hard not to.
No,
do that,
you didn't.
You know?
And I thought, and I'm glad that it didn't, but I thought it might have happened to you if I was right about what it was. And so that's the level at which it was in exactly the right place, you know. And again, and I think that idea, you know, and I'm going to say to your cousin, if she's watching, you know, I don't know what's happened since, and I'm not asking, but you may feel like it will never happen. Don't believe that feeling. Okay. Because you know, after years of thinking that, I did end up becoming a mom. So, you know, don't give up if this is something that you want. But I mean, it's really, it's so beautiful. And the song, it was such a nice surprise to hear you do that kind of song with such simple instrumentation. It took me back in a different way to what you did with the acoustic version of Hurricanes, you know, that it was just you and one instrument, and that's it. And you know, your voice and either the guitar or the piano, as the case may be. And, you know, there's nowhere to hide on songs like that, you know, instrumentally, vocally, lyrically, you know, and when you, as I've said before, the analogy that if you're, you know, cooking with a bunch of ingredients, you can pretty much throw whatever you want in there. And ultimately, if there's enough stuff in there, it'll probably taste good. If you're cooking with like 3, 4, 5 ingredients, they better be top notch, because you're going to notice every single one of them. And it's like that with a song like that, you know, where as opposed to like a grindstone, you know, or a Devil's Hall or something like that, where there's so much more going on, you know, and not that there are elements that don't all work in there either, but you would have more places to cheat things or get away with things or whatever. So I really, thanks for sharing that, you know, and thanks for writing it too, because it's, you know, it's something that so many people have experienced, and most people feel like there's still a stigma attached to it. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, every time I talk about, you know, having had miscarriages, you know, someone will text me or come up to me and say, you know, did you really want to say that to all these people? I'm like, yes, I really did. Because when I was going through it, nobody talked about it. Yeah. And that was one of the worst things, because I would just sit there, you know, in a park or whatever and watch people go by with strollers. And I thought, okay, well, everybody's got this but me, you know. And then when I started opening up about it, so many people who give birth, you know, or who can get pregnant would come up to me and say, you know, that happened to me too. That happened to me too. You know, and that alone helps. You know, it doesn't bring your baby back, but it makes you feel like you have a community, you know. And as we know, whether it's musicians or whatever else, having a community always helps. So, so yeah, I think that's beautiful that you did that. I really do. Okay, so let's before I get all weepy or whatever. So I mentioned Grindstone, and I that video gave me a kick because I loved seeing you in like your little, you know, convict onesie or whatever. Yeah, it was like prison fashion sleigh, whatever. But it was. I mean, that's another really cool song, you know. And I got some. I got a real kick out of that one because it doesn't, you know, it doesn't remind me of anything else. That song does not remind me, like there was nothing as I was listening to it where I was like, oh, this is kind of like, you know, this, or, oh, this has that element of this song. Yeah. So, I mean, I can
tell you a song that is like directly modeled, that one's directly modeled after.
Really?
And you'll go listen to it and you'll be like, oh, I get it.
Okay.
Oh, what is it? Totally. Drive by Joe Bonamassa.
Okay.
Do. Oh yeah. Yeah. Go listen to it. And you'll be like,
I will do that.
Like that's way close to that.
Okay. I got you.
It's like, it's that one. And, there's another one that he wrote too, Happier Times.
Okay.
The drum line from Happier Times is essentially the drum line for Grindstone. Not exactly, but it has that kind of like feel.
Well, good
to
for
it.
you for acknowledging the nod to that. So yeah.
Yep.
So what was the, you know, what was the impetus for that one? Because that's a very specific,
like
both the song and then the video, you know.
So that one's about being on your proverbial grindstone, which for me is music, right? And so that song was like kind of the same way as Stratosphere, right? Like I had the guitar part and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like it has this thing. And I just started singing and Grindstone came out of my mouth. And I was like, that's cool. We should work on that. And so.
Okay. So you got the word and then wrote it around. Okay. I see. So that kind of goes with what you said about you just start coming up with a lyric or whatever and write. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. Unless, you know, I have like, I'm thinking about something and I'm like, oh, like I want to apply this to that, you know, and then I'll use an outside idea. But sometimes, and a lot of the time I will find an idea as I'm playing the riff. And so, yeah, that song is, it's all about, you know, working and pushing and persevering, even though sometimes you won't want to. And, you know, I'm trying to think of the lyrics for that song. We don't usually play that song. I'm no transcender. I'm just trying to be true. I'm just living this tattered life, singing these tattered blues. Right. And so that's kind of, when I wrote the song, it's kind of how I saw the world. You know, it was like, I'm just living a tattered life. I'm working a day job that I don't want to work, but I'm trying my damnedest at music. And I'm just living this tattered life, you know, because I don't see day job work as a life. It takes all your time. It takes all your energy. I
think a lot of musicians would agree with you on that, especially. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. The right community for it to say that. Right.
Yeah.
And so,
100%.
You know, I hated that. And it was very much so like, I'm just singing this old blues stuff, you know, and it was very much so like, I know it's not that, but it was, it's definitely what it felt like. It felt like nobody was listening at the time. Cause I didn't have near as many listeners then as I do now.
Yeah.
And so, and in life so far, I've been on this grindstone. I've worked so hard on this grindstone, you know, and so it's kind of that, like, I'm trying on whatever it is that you're doing, you know.
Right. It could apply to anything. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, you know, you work so hard at what you're doing, and then, you know, the very last lyric in that is "I will prevail." Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it really kind of shows, like, if you have the persistence, if you have the ability to push yourself past your own limits, and do the things that, you know, if, like, I used to work a manual labor job, and, you know, I would come home and I would still have to work 6 to 8 hours on my music.
Yeah.
And so to have that like persistence, not a lot of people understand that. You know, you definitely have to be kind of psycho and crazy to do that kind of a thing, to spend so much time away from your family, so much time away from your social life, to all pursue a goal that is not an easy one, you know. But if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? And that's why the ones that really succeed are the ones that are persistent, and the ones that, you know, they ask for things that other people won't ask for because they don't think that they can get it, when in fact they might very well be able to.
Right. Well, and I love
really about that.
Yeah, and I love that's why that last line resonates so much, because it's like, you do all this, you do all this, you do all this, but then if you do all this, then even if it doesn't look exactly like you wanted to, you will prevail. And I think that's a good resting place for this conversation, in the sense that, you know, that encapsulates to me everything that you've talked about with, you know, your music and your brand and your marketing and the tour. And I mean, you know, with the new album coming out when it does, you know, and the change and everything that you've done. And I mean, and again, guys, I mean, we didn't talk about everything. You know, there are other songs on Spotify, other songs on YouTube. You know, Hard Times, something that's very relatable for people. You know, and again, could be whatever you need it to be lyrically, in terms of whatever you're going through. Right. Also so I mean, right? it's like, you know, you've got something for everybody. You know, you've got genre for everybody. You've got covers. You've got originals. You've got, you know what I mean? So it's I really love that you have so many facets to you, and then they come out in your music, and then your music is changing too, which is tremendous, because, you know, you could have stuck with blues rock. You absolutely could have, you know, but I think I love that you're doing the alt rock, because the stuff that I've heard so far, I really love. And again, Hurricanes, again, it was a tough choice, but definitely my favorite. And I'm sure now, after everybody has watched this, it's going to be one of their favorites too. But so, as you may know, I like to end every show with a segment that we call In the Vox Seat.
In the Vox Seat.
In the Vox Seat. Yes, this has become a big thing, because in the chat, which has become, you know, the always hilarious chat trademark, when we do the premieres for these every Monday and Thursday, we have a hardcore group of people who watch every single episode. And I mean, for those who are counting, this is probably going to be out 2.5 hours. Most of ours are at least 2 hours. These people are amazing. So Anger Overdose is probably watching. Death Pigeon, if he hasn't had to go to sleep. Freaky
Die Hard
Things.
Habits, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes. And Mechanic A is there. Crypt 13. Drunk and Lonely, you know, sometimes Lomax will come, Shallow Point, you know, whatever. I don't mean to be Asphalt Jungle, Dom from Jamsteak, you know, Angela from Yellow Friani. We have a ton of people watching, right?
So many people.
They want to hear your answers to these questions, but they are excited right now, because in the chat, I have said my seat is imminent, because it didn't occur to me when I created the title of this segment that the Vox seat is I'm the Vox, and people were going to think I was talking about my ass. So that is not what you're headed for. Don't worry. These are just questions. But I asked the same 5 questions of everybody. So you are now in the Vox seat. And the first question, and I'm really interested to see how you're going to answer this, especially given that your music is shifting focus. But if you had to sum up Bryce Evans and or the Black Cats music in 5 words or less, what would you say? I know.
It's rough. Does it have to be a coherent sentence?
Nope. Or, it can be words. It can be a couple phrases. It can be a complete sentence. It could be whatever you want it to be. as long as it's 5 words or less. And you can hyphenate. And I don't count articles.
Oh my God, this is a tough one.
It's so funny. This is the most speechless I've seen you in the last couple hours. This is
one. Nice. Okay. I think I hate talking about myself. I really do. When it comes to this kind of stuff, it's like, I hate putting labels on it because I never know.
Oh, I was like, wait, what? We've been doing that for the last 2 years.
I know,
but you don't want to label each other.
Yeah, I don't want to label my stuff. I'll say, God, I don't know. Probably hard hitting.
Okay.
Guitar driven rock.
See, that wasn't so hard, was it?
I'll go with that.
You're like, and then like at 2 a.m, you're gonna wake up in a cold sweat, like, oh no, I should have said this. But
you guys an email. Yeah. No, don't air that.
Yeah, right? I know. Don't edit it in. So we'll just, I'll voice over like, awesome music defies all genres, and then you'll just be like, yeah. So we can do that. But yeah, no. So all right, I like that though. I like that. I think that fits. Okay, your favorite thing about being a musician?
Inspiring people.
All right, very cool. I
love inspiring people, especially recently with the things that I've done, the venues that I've played, people that I've worked with. I'm inspiring people that I never thought I would inspire, and they're like, wow, watching your whole like journey of this has inspired me to like go and start cutting hair because I've always wanted to do that, or so many like different things, or like the big one for me, because I'm a trans feminine non-binary person, is a lot of people that are like that are coming to me and they're like, I love your messages, I love like what you do, you're a good person, keep doing this, and so it's very much so nice to see that like it's connecting to people. So that's what I love. I just love inspiring people to do what they love to do. And if it's music, that's awesome. But if it's not, and you like, I don't know, you like typing and sitting at a desk all day, and you want to achieve higher heights in your career with doing that,
whatever it is.
That's great. If my music does that for you, that's like the highest reward for me.
That's it. And I think also, even beyond the music, it's you being who you are and embodying that in every way. Right. So to be this, like, as I said, statuesque, bald person with like fierce makeup and nails and, and to live your life and not live it the way other people want you to or whatever, like that alone. And you said it yourself, that's giving life and courage and community to people who need community and often are turned away from it, don't find it, whatever. And like, that can be, and I think one of the cool things is that if you have 5 different people from 5 different walks of life that take inspiration from your music, then you've connected 5 different people from 5 different walks of life who might otherwise have never shared anything in common.
I saw, not to get off topic, this is on the topic of this. When I saw Eric Gales this last week, what a monster guitar player. But he has been through so many things in his life being a black man, right? And has experienced so much racism in his life. And so towards the end of his show, he said something that really resonated with me, and this is where this connects. And he said, like for the hour and a half or 2 hours that I play every night, the reason that I love to play for people is because I bring your mind from all the horrible things that are out there in those streets just outside of the doors of this venue. And I try to take your mind off of that for the next hour and a half to 2 hours that I'm standing here. And if I can do that, and if I can inspire one person when they go home and they leave here, then that's what I'm here for. And I was like, man, that's what I'm talking about. And that's exactly it. So inspiring people. I love that.
No, great answer and great detail too, because that means different things to different people. So I love that you specified, what that is. But okay, so every coin has 2 sides. So what is your least favorite thing about being a musician?
The business. I hate the music business. I hate it. I hate the fact that I have to consistently post, right? I hate the fact that I have to consistently deal with venue owners that are so difficult to deal with, all
Mhm.
because they own a venue. And it's like, cool,
Right.
bro. So does like a whole bunch of other people in this country.
Yeah.
Like, who cares about your little venue? You know, like, I'm just an artist trying to do business and make money.
Yeah.
And I understand that I don't have a massive following of people that comes to my shows. So getting the money that I need is
Yeah.
difficult from times, you know, but that's kind of how you build a brand, is you have to go with those difficulties and go with those difficult shows.
right.
But there also comes a line of respect.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I have a venue here in Colorado that I work with, and they're very, very kind people. They try to do their best for the artists.
Hmm.
And then I have venues that I don't work with anymore because they're just horrible, horrible
Right.
people, and they just
Right.
don't care about anything but the money. And that's like, you're not helping anybody if that's the case. You know, if you want to
No.
build a good brand, which should be your number one goal, and then your money will come later when it should. And
That's
in troves that you're going to need to stabilize your business, but it takes time to build to that point.
Right.
And so, yeah, I hate the business. I hate the music business. I'm understanding it. I'm starting to
Yeah.
understand how to navigate it, but
Yeah.
my least favorite thing.
I do not blame you at all, because it's the thing that has the least to do with the music, but it is
Absolutely.
a unfortunate necessity. So, okay, I feel you.
And back to point number one, real quick, what
Yeah.
that does too is by posting consistently and by putting out that work, that inspires other people to do that, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And so it kind of all connects together
That's
on that
true.
one.
Look at you connecting things. You're so connecty. Okay, this I am not. I have a guess. Well, actually, I have two possible guesses, but I'm not sure which one it would be, and it might not be either. But you're gonna hate me for this, I can tell, because based on your response to the first question, you're really not gonna like this one. But if you had to choose one album for the rest of your life, it is the only album that you could listen to.
No way.
Didn't I say they were going to hate me? I said they were going to hate me, and I knew it. Because I'm like, is he going to pick? Are they going to pick an MCR? Are they going to pick a Clapton? Are they going to pick a Bonamassa? What are they?
Yeah.
What would it be,
MCR.
and why? Okay.
Yeah, Black Parade.
Okay.
And the reason for that, right? Like, everybody's probably like, boo, or you know, especially if you don't like MCR. But to me, that album was life-changing, completely life-changing. And the other part of that is that a lot of those songs connected with me. Everybody has that album, you know, that you listen to at a pinnacle point in your life where your emotions are high, you've gone through something traumatic. And that one album is there for you. And that's what you listen to. And you consistently listen to that album for a long period of time. And you probably still do. You know, it might have the same meaning, but it might also have different meanings now.
Yeah.
But everybody has that album, and that album is that for me. I mean, and the whole point of that album is, you know, it's basically backwards, right? But with the beginning song "Dead," it really kind of just makes you realize, like, in the end of all this, you're gonna die, right? Like, after all the crap, you're gonna die. And then towards the very last song, like, my favorite song in that album is Disenchanted. And I found out, like, after reading some lore about that band, is that it's about like their hate for the music industry and how, like, if you think that this industry is all glam and a whole lot of, you know, cool crowds and a whole lot of, you know, awesome getting drunk and you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll type thing, that's not what it is. And as the lyrics go, of course, now I can't think of them right as I'm on the spot.
That's the way when people are like, you know, what kind of music do you like? And it's like, I forget
totally.
what all bands exist. Yeah.
But in the song Disenchanted, it basically says, like, if you don't matter anyway, if you think it's, God damn it. Like, now I sound just stupid. Anyways,
no, you're not the first person to choke on the.
So hard. So anyways, in that song, it basically just talks about, like, if you think that this is all glam and all awesome, like, you need to think again, because it's not, and we don't think that you should do it. And so, you know, like, that kind of spoke to, back then I didn't know that, you know, when I first heard that song, and it meant something totally different. And now that I'm in the industry, I'm like, oh, I get it now. Like, touring, being in a van with a couple dudes all the time, hotel rooms, horrible pizza, You know, like there's so much to the industry that people don't think about. All they see is the crowds and how cool is that band because
Right.
they just
Right.
played Riot Fest or whatever, and it's like
It's like
but
social media, you know, you see the curated parts and the high
Right.
parts, but you don't see all the shit that goes in behind it. No,
Yep.
and I love that because you're right. When everybody does have that like Binky or security blanket album, you know, and a sign of a great album is if it can grow with you, you know,
Yeah.
when you go back and you read the lyrics or you listen to the song and then it hits you differently because of your life experience. So that's a great
Absolutely.
answer. And
Love
that
that
no one
album.
has said an MCR album yet. So you're the
Yes.
first one. I know. Look at that. Popping the MCR
Yes,
cherry. But
for
all right,
sure.
Bryce.
Mhm.
Bryce, I began this with intensity, ferocity, soul-bearing, you know, question about sandals and socks.
Oh my God.
We're
Yeah.
going to end on something, and I know you're going to be like, what? Can't possibly be. No, it doesn't exist. Even more intense and soul-bearing. And I mean, this is you are naked in the eyes of the audience at this moment because there is a very,
Oh God.
very strong contingent of people in both directions here who are waiting for your answer to this insanely important question. Are you prepared? Are your
I'm
loins
ready.
girded? Are they girded?
Let's do it. Come
You
on.
may want to gird them. Okay, here we go. This is it. Last question. I have to get ready for this.
Oh God.
Your toilet paper roll.
Okay.
Does the toilet paper come over the top or do you pull it out from under the bottom, and why?
Neither. Who keeps it on a holder? I mean, let's get real here. What's the point of the damn thing? Because then
So
that way, whoever has it, you can go over the top or under the bottom.
Your
Like,
toilet paper is also non-binary. It is not going
Yeah,
to go in either
fucking A.
direction. It's just
damn
gonna
right.
Okay, so you are not the first one to say that. We got Joel from Grimrock who wants to put it, or was it Louis Tivy? I don't know. That's such a bromance. I'm not sure, but I think it was Grim wanted to put it on a paper towel holder in the same vein so that nobody could have an. But okay, so Freaky, I'm
Okay.
sorry, he did not. They did not say over, and Dom, I'm sorry, they did not say under. They are not committing. That's it.
Neither.
It is neither.
Non-conforming. I am toilet paper non-conforming.
There you go. That's it. I love it. No, you know what? Because you can't be told what to do because you're Bryce
Exactly.
Evans,
Hell yeah.
bitches. Yeah.
Damn right, bitches.
Bryce, it has been so great to have you, and I really I can't wait for the new stuff that's coming out. You know, we don't know exactly when, but it'll be sometime next year.
Hopefully
second
soon.
half.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
And worth the wait because it sounds like you've got a multi, you know, level,
So much
multi-sensory,
going into this.
dimensional experience. I cannot wait to see what
Yeah.
you have next. So guys, you got to follow their social media. You got to follow their Spotify because they
More
can spring a
importantly,
new. Oh,
more importantly, get onto the mailing list.
get onto their mailing list. Yes, and you
become
can
a
do that
shelter
from their
member.
website, right?
Become a shelter member because becoming a shelter member is going to get you access to some of the first things, the new happenings before
Okay.
it happens.
Okay.
So if you're like a new shelter member now, you'll get a few things when we start to release things rather than if you sign up after everything.
Okay. Do you see that? You want to get in on the ground floor of their explosive new music. You do.
Exactly. Yeah.
You do. They do.
Yeah.
They do. They all do. Now they're all going to the website now.
Yeah.
Just say it now. You might as well.
Yeah, BryceEvansMusic.com. There should
There
be
you
a
go. Could
pop-up
not be
right
any
as you
easier.
get there.
Could not be. It's right at the top. It's right at
Yep.
the top. As are you going to be, my dear. I think you keep doing what you're doing right at the top. And I'm excited for you to be back at the Whiskey in November.
too.
And
Me too.
I am excited to see what comes out, what you and Colin do, who you end up giving the honor of playing bass with you too, and all of that good stuff. But thank you for being honest and being cool and being funny.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Thank you
for
having me.
slaying and all of that. And it's been great to talk to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love sharing these things with all my fans. So it's nice when people do this kind of a thing because, you know, I had somebody on the other podcast that I was on the other day ask me like, I just think this is stupid and I just do it for fun. And I'm like, no. What you don't understand is you are so making a platform for musicians where their fans get to see who they are and not so much what music they make, what the branding is. They get to see the artist. And he was like, wow, I never thought of it that way. And I'm like,
That's a nice
this
thing
is
to say.
huge. Like podcasts they're awesome. And so thank you for running this. Thank you for running Band Together. My following has grown tremendously just because
Oh, that makes me so happy.
of Band Together.
that makes my shirt worth it. I don't know if you can read it, but it says "Helping people is my kink," which is completely.
Yeah.
So that always makes me happy if I've helped you at all to get your excellent music out in front of more people. That's but I throw that to the people watching this because they're the real MVPs of this whole thing.
Absolutely. And I feel kind of bad for not being able to be in Band Together as much as I was in the beginning. But thankfully I'm going to start getting some time soon to where I can most certainly be back on. So
we understand. We hold the fort down, and even when I had to not be around, they hold the fort down for me. So we got you. We got you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was so great.
You. Thank you.
All right, guys, that's it. That's another and I mean an explosive, final question answer. I mean, to the very last minute, Bryce has kept us guessing. They will not be contained or conformed or anything. So thank you for watching another Voxing Guest, and we will see you next time. Bye.